Monday night. CP3 live from the lab with Robbie G. We already got Anna K sitting in the Zoom waiting room to talk some Capitals in this unfortunate overtime loss, 3-2 to Tampa Bay. We're going to talk some Washington Wizards, recap their game. I believe they lost. I think I saw the score. We'll let Robbie then break that down, and then we'll talk about the shortened baseball season in this game, in this show. Robbie G, how you doing tonight, good sir?
I'm doing okay. I definitely wish we would have won either of these games that were today, this afternoon. But for the most part, not too bad. I was definitely rocking. I thought this guy right here, Mr. TJ Oshie, was a big part of the Capitals' success today. And I think we'll talk about it in a little bit. But I was happy to see the effort level go up once he had that fight there. So we'll break that down. We'll talk a little bit about the Hurricanes game, which I know was just a scrimmage, but I do want to bring it up because the Hurricanes are looking pretty good. We're going to have other people joining us for the Hockey Roundtable. Brian Brennan, we're going to have a full maybe hockey hour to start the show. We're also going to talk some basketball. We're going to have the NBA Roundtable join us at the sort of end of the hour, top of the next hour, and then we'll end it with some baseball talk as well. We just have one series to cover this week because as we predicted last week on Sports on the Hill podcast, that Miami series did not happen. And it's really interesting to see the standings. We'll probably talk about that for a minute as well, just because it's kind of strange. The standings are so weird because some teams have played many more games than other teams have played so far. So some teams played their way into doing really well, and some teams played themselves out of it. So
we got to speak about the possibility of the season being shut down. The commissioner came out. We were speaking about how they didn't properly, anticipate some of these issues they're having, and there's an actual threat of the season possibly being shut down with the cases that been popping up. We're getting a little bit of it. We'll talk a little bit about that in the baseball segment of the show because we did speak on the last week. Not that we're psychic or anything, but we know a little bit about some sports.
For sure. I'm just giving some TJ Oshie some prominence here. Let's talk hockey, and we'll bring in Anna here, and then we can maybe share to a couple of Caps groups real quickly, and I'll share my feed to them, and we can, if anyone has any questions, they can jump in on the producer feed. Anna, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I was really hoping to chat with you guys tonight about a win, but there were some things that stood out to me that I think we're gonna have to look at in upcoming games, and players that I think could use a little improvement.
Yeah. First game back, me and Robbie were speaking offline about it during the game. Not having Carlson out there, especially on the power play, that played a key role in it. They're a little out of sync. You can tell some of the passes. They were trying to do things that they were known to be doing in the middle of the season when they were in sync right now, and they're not in sync right now. So it was a close game. It was a sloppy game, but I really wouldn't be too critical of the first game, being like Robbie said, at least they got a point. And another game back in, next game and play, get the 2 points, and then you're right back in it.
Yeah. I think what I saw, same thing, Carol, was that first period it was sloppy. It was there was a lot of adrenaline going on, and a lot of hey, we haven't played in a while, let's go out and do, and then you make these stupid mistakes, passing or whatever it is. I will say I was impressed with the amount of minimal time in the sin bin. I think that spoke volumes, because I think in the Carolina game and the games that kind of, we'll say, didn't count as much, there were so many penalty calls and so many minutes. It was a bit ridiculous, but I think that they wanted to come out strong. Sometimes I think that they almost overdid it a little bit and got a little too excited with certain plays. So that unfortunately was something that didn't work in their favor. But I think after things sort of calmed down, I think that we finally saw who the Caps are, in the playoffs come that second and third period, which I knew it was going to be a 3-2 game. I really hope it would have been 3-2 Caps, but that's okay. I mean, Tampa Bay is out there. I think everybody in this playoff series right now is going to give that 110%. So we can't expect to go in and say this should be a sure win.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back a little bit. I do want to talk about the Carolina game just a bit. Do you happen to have the scoring in that one written down, Anna? Okay, why don't we start there just to give people a little bit of a flavor. I know that game didn't count for much, but Carolina turns out to be a pretty good team, at least in the games I've seen since. So maybe it could have meant more than I originally thought. So why don't we break that down a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think that I agree with you. I think it was a team that we have this rivalry with, and I think sometimes we forget how big the rivalry truly is because that team has a ton of talent. And they're going to give everything they can. So we have, going into that first period, we have our captain scoring at, let me put my glasses on. How about that? At 8:27 with assist by Oshie and Orlov, and that was on a power play goal. Carolina did come back and score, but to close out the first period, Kuzi scored. And I truly felt like, as not just a Capitals fan, but as a hockey fan in general, this is what Kuzi needed. We needed to see him come out strong in playoffs, do what he does best, and show everybody that that he's back. Put all the drama and everything from what happened in the off season behind him, and really just kind of see what he can do. And I thought he was fantastic in that first period. I don't know if did both of you see it, or?
I honestly didn't get a chance to catch it. I got to see some parts of it in the highlights, but Kuzi, since you spoke on Kuzi, I didn't feel like he would have a hangover from, the stuff in the early season. He with him, this team goes, and he knows that from that playoff run and the impressive, numbers that he put up and the impressive way that he played. So it's good to see him scoring, but with what I saw today, even though they weren't as crisp, he was still on his game. He was back checking. He was making plays, trying to make stuff happen. Some of the fancy passes, like we talked about, didn't connect. But I feel like, this was like a warm-up game. Unfortunately, they didn't come out on the right side of it, going to the shootout. Would have much rather it have been 3-on-3, like Robin talked about, for like a whole 10 minutes. And, the winner, go from there. And then if you get a winner, then you go to the shootout, give them a little bit more time, especially with this new formula for the playoffs and everything. But yeah, Kuzi definitely looked good out there today, but I didn't catch the Carolina. Sorry to go off on that tangent. Robbie, what about you?
Right. No, it's I was really happy with the compete level in that Carolina game. That was the big thing that was a takeaway from me, because I was wondering, what sort of level will we get from that, especially because we have that sort of scrimmage and then this round robin, which means something for seeding, but maybe not as much as, some of these elimination, tournament style games. So I was happy to see the compete level. The first half of this game, I didn't see that. I was starting to get a little bit bummed. I was like, oh, why, I can't believe they competed harder against Carolina. Yeah. And we'll get more into this game in a second, but I was really happy with the compete level. I was disappointed that obviously John Carlson got hurt, because that's the one thing that you can't have happen in a scrimmage. I understand it's sports, you can't control everything, but it was just disappointing to get hurt in that situation where I'm happy they kept him out of this game, even if it meant that we lost one of the 2 points, just because you want him to be 100%. And as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter overall. It matters, but it doesn't matter quite as much as it does to some of these other games. But well, that's good. I think we've covered it enough, this scrimmage. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I just wanted to bring it in a little bit, because I do think it was an important just sort of barometer to where our team was. Overall, Anna, why don't you break down the goal scoring in today's matchup, and then we can get into that a little bit further.
Sure. I think we all had high hopes for this, and but I will say I don't think anyone was surprised that Kucherov scored first or scored at all. I mean, we just have, a fantastic competitor and somebody that the Capitals really need to be on for 60 minutes. That you can't give that guy any leeway. So anyways, he does score at 12:53 in the first, and that was the only goal. And into the second period, Steven scores for Tampa Bay, assisted by McDonough and Maroon. So I think fans were probably starting to feel like, okay, this is where the Capitals really have to start to prove themselves. We're either going to lose this game terribly in a shutout, or they are going to bounce back and become that second half team, which I know that we have seen before. And I think, thank God we did see that. Unfortunately, we had to go into overtime. Richard Panik, there's that one player that I think everyone's on the fence with. Like, I don't love him. I don't hate him. I don't know what to think of Richard Panik, but he was the right place at the right time. Had a fantastic goal with assist by Gudis and Eller. And then here we go with Kuzi again. I think he's just really going to shine during the playoffs, and that's exactly what the Capitals need. And I also feel like the opponents are going to be looking for the Ovechkins, the Wilsons, the Backstroms to score. And we're going to have to really rely on other players to step up, and that's going to speak volumes on their positioning on the ice and who they're with and how much they're just paying attention to where the puck is. So that was good. And then so we shut out third period, there was no goals, and we go into the 3-on-3. There was nothing, and the shootout. Oshie did have his moment, which we all knew was going to happen, but unfortunately Tampa Bay was able to score twice on Holtby, and that was that.
Yeah. My real quick thoughts was I felt like the compete level, as I started to say before, just wasn't there until TJ Oshie had that fight. I mean, you don't want one of your best players to have a fight. He's worth so much more. I was joking with my mom, with Liz, with the idea that we don't want to trade one of your best players for one of their middle range players, right? So right. Tampa Bay won that battle in the sense of who's going off for 5 minutes, but in that 5 minutes, what happens next? Does that incite sort of the fire within the Capitals to be like, oh, he really went to town and he's not even a fighter for us, but he's really putting his heart on the line. I want to play that next level, right? Get up to that level or not, right? So, I mean, it can work and it can backfire. I really like the next bunch of shifts, though. They got the sort of a goal. Then that fourth line gets really gritty into it, and they were able to draw that penalty. And then they were able to score on that power play with Kuzi going hard to the net, which is not really Kuzi's bread and butter. He's more of a finesse player. But I like, anybody can get into the paint and just score. It reminds me of Knuble, right? It just, you got to get into the paint and you just kind of grind out some goals sometimes. And so I was really happy to see that. I was disappointed that I thought the play was still pretty good in the third, but they didn't really carry over in a way that I was hoping. I thought they would drive with that momentum and, maybe take it another step. I thought both teams played pretty well. Both teams were playing a little bit hesitant because they don't want to get hurt, I think. It's sort of that fine line where you want to have the intensity and you want to be there, but you also, these games, they matter for seeding, but we've talked about it many times. Seeding isn't everything in the NHL playoffs, especially without fans, in the stands. So you want to play to a level, but you don't want to. But I was talking in the Sin Bin, the Caps fan group, about how the compete level, I just wanted them to shake off that rust and be able to play some really competitive, good hockey games, because you're going to be playing some teams that just came out of a grueling, potentially 5-game series, and you want to be at that level. And so I think that was really important, and I was really happy to see in that sort of the latter half of the game.
I gotta kind of disagree with that. I don't feel like their compete level wasn't there. Tampa Bay is a quality squad. I saw, Hagelin out there. He had a breakaway in the first period, splitting the defense. Making a straight beeline. He didn't score, but it was a quality chance. And you got to give Tampa Bay some credit. They have a loaded squad, and the fact that this team held them to 3 goals scored when they shut out the team, 5-0 the other game that they played. Even I think it was Florida, but still for it to go to the shootout and having to go to extra rounds of the shootout to get a 3-2 victory, to me, that shows the compete was there to go up against one of the top offensive squads in the game, even though they were missing Stamkos, we were missing Carlson. But I felt like the compete level was there. I just think they were out of sync as a team and not having Carlson out there. It was a mental and a physical thing out there. The play was off a little bit. The passes weren't as crisp, and they were making blind passes that normally Carlson or somebody else would be in a position to make that play. So I'm not really, wasn't really too concerned about the so-called compete level. It was just, Tampa was more crisp than the Capitals were. And if they, build off of it, Carlson comes back for the next game, I feel like they'll be ready to rock and roll and take things to the next level. So, I mean, to me, it was a quality game. It went to, shootout to, extra rounds because both teams were playing, equally well. Just that Tampa, played a little bit better and were able to, get that extra point.
Yeah. Right. And to go back on the thought about it, it's disappointing that it ends in a shootout because we don't particularly love shootouts. But I am happy that they shortened the game because I don't want it to be one of these things where it's triple overtime and somebody gets hurt because they've played too long. One of the advantages we've gotten by playing in this position is to not have to play grueling, super long games, right? I thought it was good. We got to play a little extra. We got to play 65 minutes and we get a result. Maybe it's not the result we wanted, but honestly, if I was, at the end of the first period, if someone told me I was getting a point out of this game, I would have been happy because I didn't think it was going well. And I'll agree with you, Carol, at the compete level. Maybe it was just sloppy and not crisp. I just thought that they would seem crisper in the previous game. So I was surprised that it kind of fell back, but maybe part of it was we've had one of the longest layovers from the scrimmage to when we actually played the game. I mean, everyone else played it over the weekend pretty much. And they didn't.
The rest going into the next game. That game is until Thursday, so they get another extra day.
Right.
And I will say I was impressed with Holtby. Truly, I feel like, gosh, the cameraman kind of zoned in on him, and I put on Facebook and thought, God, he is really in like beast mode. Like he just looked so focused and so ready, and I was happy to see. I was happy to see that, and I was, without Carlson, you always want to know that the next person who's going to come up is going to be giving it their all, and I felt like I was hesitant with Gudas. I'll have to admit, I felt like I was on the fence with how he was going to do, but I thought he did well. I thought he was exactly where he needed to be. He played aggressively. He had, some moments that I thought, you know what, that's what we needed to see from him, to say, okay, you know what, good on you, like, way to go, 33.
I mean, with Gudas, it's not really a question mark for me. Being the vet that he is, and some of the teams that he's played for, he's one person I wouldn't have a concern about. I mean, offensively, you're not going to get anything, out of him, but you're going to get solid defensive plays and quality zone presence and get the puck out of there as quickly as possible. 3 things that the defenseman has to do, and I feel like he does those in all facets. I wouldn't even really think. I was just more concerned that Carlson wasn't there than more concerned about Gudas being in there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought the whole team played pretty well in general, and I agree with you, Carol, that Tampa Bay is a really good team. I kept on looking at that roster, and more players kept on coming over. I'm like, man, this team is stacked. I forgot they even have Shattenkirk, right? Like, Shattenkirk's probably one of their worst defenders, but like the fact that he can, be in, I assume, the bottom of their 6 is still a really good defender to have there, right? So. I don't actually know where he's slated in the defensive core, but regardless, they just kept on having players that kept on coming over. I'm like, oh my God, they don't stop, right? So, I thought that was a really good first test for our team, and to come out of it with a point. And as Carol was saying earlier, if we can get a win in the next 2 games, and some other teams can sort of knock each other around, we could be right there. And the reality is we were the third place team coming into this, right? So if we get first or second, that's fantastic. If we fall to fourth, it's not that big of a fall, right? But we just want to have good competition and just be prepared for the teams that are coming next.
Absolutely.
We all recall on that championship run, they won every series, close them out on the road. So when you go on the road, for especially in the playoffs, it simplifies things. The guys are more focused. They don't have any distractions, and it's like a business trip, just like you want to treat it. You go out there to handle your business. And that's why I really don't care where they finish in the top four. As long as they playing Capitals hockey, they can win the whole damn thing.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's. I think we've talked about as much as we can about one game. So I think we should talk about the NHL as a whole. So we're going to bring in our next guest here, Brian Brennan, who talks part of our NHL roundtable. How are you doing tonight, Brian?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How's it going?
Hey, Brian.
Good to have you in the building, man.
Yeah.
Always good to be here.
All right. So I know it's going to be a tough subject. We're going to start it off with your team, and then since we talked about our team first, and then from there we'll talk about the rest of the NHL. So there's Rangers series. I really thought the Rangers Carolina series would be a bit closer than it's been so far. And I will put the stat out there, hopefully to jinx it in your case, that in a 5-game series, teams up 2-0 are 55-1 in the history of the NHL. So the only other time it's ever happened is a New York team, the Islanders, doing it over the Capitals in 1986. So I'm hoping, and since the late 80s, there haven't been 5-game series. So it's been a long time. And so I'm hoping that you guys can make a series of this. What have you seen in the first 2 games against the Hurricanes?
Well, I thought this was going to be a really good matchup for the Rangers going into it. As I said last week, I thought that they had a good grasp on Carolina. They had beaten them every single time they had played in the regular season this year. But honestly, I underestimated how good Carolina was. They've got a lot of really good players. Sebastian Aho's been killing it. Svechnikov, I think is his name. He scored a hat trick today. And the Rangers have they're just not playing their best hockey. In the first game of the series, they had 7 power plays. They didn't score on any of them. They actually scored a shorthanded goal, but they didn't score a power play goal, which was crazy in the first game. The first game was much closer than this one. Honestly, Carolina pretty much dominated this game. They scored this second game. They scored 2 goals in a minute and 11-second span to make it 3-1 in the second period. And then they scored a put-away goal in the third period. It just hasn't been good. Henrik Lundqvist started in goal for the Rangers. That was the big question going into this series. Who was going to be starting in goal? The rookie Igor Shesterkin is not even dressing for this series. So it's crazy. But Lundqvist is, I honestly have to say, Lundqvist is doing all he can. He's been as good as he possibly can be at this point. He was really good in game 1, less good today. But it is frustrating, to know that I really don't think there's much of a chance for a comeback. I think Carolina's really looking good. They showed why they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So I'm not too optimistic for a comeback, but we'll see what happens. Anything can happen in a best of 5.
Do you think, there's a very short turnaround until your game 3, which is actually tomorrow, if you're checking us out live, or Tuesday, if you're not. But that short turnaround can be good because you've got the fire and the anger and the back's against the wall. It can also be difficult because you'll be tired, obviously. What are your thoughts in a game 3? I know you don't think they're going to come back overall in the series, but do you think the Rangers take a couple here and make it a long series, or do you think that it's done tomorrow?
If it's anything like the first 2 games have been, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to sweep this series. I really have not been optimistic from what I've seen from the Rangers at all. And they're without Jesper Foss, who's been one of their best players all season. He actually got injured in a hit in game 1 from his former teammate, Brady Shea. It wasn't like anything malicious or anything, but it was interesting to see a former teammate injure a current Ranger. I thought that was crazy. But, I think that's costing the Rangers as well. I don't think there's much hope going into game 3, but we'll see what happens. I think they are going to start Lundqvist in game 3. I don't think they have any reason to go to Shesterkin at this point, or Georgiev. So yeah, I think it's going to be. I think the Carolina's going to close it out, but if the Rangers can force it, I think the furthest it's going to go is 4, because I really think Carolina's playing red hot hockey right now.
Yeah. All right, one last question about the Rangers. So I don't know, why was the goalie out and sitting out, the goalie that's been so good all season for you?
Nobody's really sure. They just decided to go with Henrik Lundqvist. Shesterkin might have actually been injured in the warm-up game against the Islanders, or maybe a practice after that. They haven't really said anything on it, but it makes sense why they're going to Lundqvist, obviously, because he's got the most playoff experience over a guy like Georgiev, who's the backup goalie. I mean, Lundqvist pretty much has every Ranger playoff record. He's been in so many playoff games. That's why they decided to go with him. The only thing missing from his playoff resume is a Stanley Cup, unfortunately. But I think that going to Lundqvist was the right decision over Georgiev. I do wish Shesterkin would have gotten some playoff experience, but what can you do?
Right, yeah, because for me it was they kept on showing him but not explaining why he wasn't playing. So it was kind of a weird thing.
It's weird.
And just overall, a lot of those goals I really don't put on Lundqvist. I thought they were mostly poor defensive efforts on almost all of them. I mean, there's 1 or 2 goals over both of the first 2 games that I would blame Lundqvist for, but a vast majority was on the defense and not on him. But and that's disappointing, because I thought you guys started off pretty well today. The Rangers did, and then it kind of, as you said, that 2 minutes kind of all just fell apart for them, and then it kind of feeds into this Carolina can then kind of control the tempo from there. So I think that that's going to be your key in a game 3, is obviously get the lead early and somehow play better defense and support what Hank is doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think having a neutral site is hurting them as well, because now they're playing at the same place instead of going to Madison Square Garden. So I think that's going to hurt as well. But everybody's got to deal with that, so that's not unique to the Rangers.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if the second change, being able to choose your line based on the other team's line, will have any impact also at the faceoff dot, where you can put your stick. Those are little things, but they're the only things that are different now. So I'll be curious to see. We haven't seen it shift yet from one home place to the other, quote unquote, home. But it'll be interesting to see if that changes some of these series or not. But I'm hoping tonight that the Penguins go down 0-2. That's going to be an interesting thing.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So let's get into that series next, because I was sort of shocked by, we talked about compete level earlier, but Montreal, I thought, played pretty well. I think Pittsburgh did not play well in that first game. But I'll start off with you, Anna. What were some of your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of went into it pulling for any team that plays the Penguins, really is what it comes down to. But I will say that the Canadians, wow, like they really came out and they played smart hockey. And I think that always shows that there's a side of other teams that when they get a little too comfortable in a playoff position, a little too cocky or a little too arrogant or whatever it is, that they tend to make mistakes. And I think that, yes, Crosby scored, but I really didn't think that we saw the Penguins at their best. Not to say that they're not going to come back tonight with vengeance, but I think that they kind of let their guard down. And I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I'll admit that. It was kind of nice. And that's what I think was so fantastic about this whole playoffs in general, is there are a couple of teams out there that are just, whoa, I didn't see that coming, or holy, I didn't see that score coming, kind of thing. And that's what makes it so exciting, is that there isn't any kind of, shoe in. Everyone is at, the starting gate. Everyone's there at the same time. And it's just going to be who's going to keep the head in the game and who's going to play smart hockey and stay out of the sin bin and give it their all. And I think that we're starting to see, teams that have players that are shining and others that are going to kind of come forward. And I think it makes it very exciting.
Yeah. So you nailed a lot of important points that I wanted to sort of speak on. One is that this is really the playoffs, right? So I've sort of been debating back and forth, should these points and these, stats count towards playoff stats, right? Because now we're going to have 5 rounds versus 4. And
Right.
as a stat guy, that kind of hurts me because I'm like, how could any stat compete with that? But
we have an asterisk by it regardless. So, I mean, it with the extra, with the new format, you're probably not even going to be able to put it into the same category as a regular, playoff series just because of that factor in itself that it was an extra, round that could skew the numbers or whatever. So I don't even think that if they do have any records, they're all going to have asterisks by it.
Right. Well, that's probably true. But I do love the compete, especially in these 5-game series. The round robins have been very exciting as well. I think actually I've yet to see a not exciting hockey game come out of this. And there was a lot of hesitancy from a lot of hockey fans and a lot of hockey groups saying you're letting a lot of subpar teams get in here. And I would say some of these teams are surprising people. And the reality is, after a 4-month playoff, everyone kind of has a clean slate. You don't know, everyone's healthy. Everyone has an opportunity.
Everybody, all the stars are healthy, rested. So it's more of an even playing field. And we know how hockey is unpredictable. You can run into a hot goalie or a hot team that might not necessarily been playing their best at the end of the regular season, but because of this situation, they got to regroup, recharge their batteries, and maybe their coaches put some new wrinkles in and saw some things when they were sitting at home for 4 months and saw some things that were needed to be fixed, and they got a chance to actually fix those things. So now, as I say, it's a whole new ball game with this setup. So I kind of, unfortunately, had to become because of a pandemic, but this is going to be a unique hockey playoff just for that fact alone, that it's more of a level playing field, that most teams are healthy and have had time to fix some of the errors of their ways earlier in the season. So I think we're going to see some good hockey from start to end, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, the level has just been much higher than even I was anticipating. I thought there had been a lot more rust from the beginning. We saw a little bit of that in the Caps game today, but I'm really impressed with the play. Every game I've watched has been exciting, even games I probably wouldn't care about usually. I like this wall-to-wall coverage that they're all playing. Since they all have to play in the same buildings, that means that they're all getting televised, right? Because they have that opportunity because with scheduling now. I just think overall it's just been really exciting. Anna, have you watched any of the other games?
Oh yeah. So Brian, I was pulling for your team.
Thank you. I like it.
I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, guys, I watched the whole thing. But I will say what kind of kicked off the whole this is no joke, like these playoffs are dead serious, is the fact that you have a veteran player like Justin Williams dropping the gloves, who that's not his thing. He didn't do it, definitely didn't do it with the Capitals. That just wasn't his style. And the fact that when he went to Carolina, he, led the team and then kind of was back and forth on retiring, not retiring, everything. And then all of a sudden he comes out and there you are. He's dropping the gloves. First period, he's ready to go. He kind of set that precedent, and it was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is good stuff. And you could see there was a lot of, needing to kind of get that out. But I think Justin Williams, he was the one kind of surprise for me. I was really hoping to see more from the Rangers. I don't think they're out.
You and me both.
I'm going to hope for the best, but I do agree with you. Carolina has a pretty fantastic team, and they definitely have that drive over the last 2 seasons where they just kind of were so close and then didn't get it. So,
yeah, I love seeing the cup in the middle of the ice. I know because it's a neutral site.
Me too.
Yeah,
I think that looks really cool. Yeah.
It looks better that way, honestly.
Yeah, I kind of think that all teams should have to do that for the Stanley Cup playoffs from now on. I love that look just because it reminds you, Steve Dangle said it the best. The second he saw Stanley Cup written on the side and the cup is there and they realize that these games really matter. And for these teams in the early rounds, some people are like, well, they're sort of play-ins to the thing, whatever. No, these are playoff games. It's like March Madness when they added the first 4, right? Yeah. Those are all games that count, right? I mean, even if it's another round or whatever, they all matter a lot. I'm hoping that some of these teams can pull off some upsets here. We already talked a little bit about the Habs. Hopefully they're playing tonight at 8:00. We can maybe even give scoring updates. I actually just put on another game. The Vegas Golden Knights right now are playing against the Dallas Stars. They're up 1-0. So this is their first game. We talked about how the Caps had their first game today. The only teams that had not played other than the Caps and Tampa Bay are these two right here. So Vegas is up 1-0 at home. And it's 16-15 left in the second period in that game. So that one's right now on NHL Network, and is also on NBC Sports until I believe that Penguins game is on a little bit later. So I don't know much about that series because it's happening right now. But the Islanders, Florida had one game, and then they've had a couple of days off. The Islanders have taken a lead in that series. I didn't get to watch any of that game. Did any of you guys watch any of that game?
Yeah, I did. I actually saw a good portion of that game. It was a good game. Florida fought with the Islanders. The Islanders scored the first 2 goals, then Florida got one in the third to make it 2-1. They were trying to fight back from there, but the Islanders ultimately closed the door. It was a pretty good game, pretty good start to that series. But like I said last week, I still probably expect the Islanders to come out on top in that series.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, and
of course, he's going to have him ready to play. And just like I was talking about Carolina the week before, they're going to be a problem. And like you said, with the fact that Justin Williams dropping the gloves, you got a coach that has him motivated and playing. It's going to be an interesting playoffs, and yeah, Carolina's going to be a problem. So whenever things get settled with the round robin thing, and it's about to get into it, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these playoffs fall out because there's a lot of hungry teams out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely,
for sure. So the series that I'm really interested in, and I was watching. And I've already mentioned his name, Steve Dangle fan. I've always sort of loved his podcast style and his post-game shows, and I always wanted to do that. That was part of what inspired me to help create this show with Carol. That series is so interesting with Columbus, right? Because you got two teams that are just filled with playoff heartbreak over the last bunch of years. Now, Columbus did kind of break through last year, but both of them had been knocked out of first rounds so many times over the last couple of years. So some team doesn't get actually to be able to be part of the first regular round this year. And so it's going to be a really interesting battle. As we talked about last week, Tortorella is a great coach, and he gets teams up for games. And I thought that he had a really great game plan against Toronto. It's hard to beat Toronto. I know that technically it's not their home ice, but they've played in that rink so often. It's hard for me to believe that there isn't some inherent advantage just in, being able to, that they have more practice in that arena than anybody, knows how the boards bounce, all of that. And the fact that they were able to hold them down and be able to just put together a really respectable win, I was very impressed by Columbus. Did anybody else see any of that game or series so far?
I only saw highlights.
Yeah, I didn't see any of it, unfortunately, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
2-0 win. Yeah, that's get a shutout in the playoffs or start of the season. Restart is, letting you know that they're ready, they're focused, and they're looking to play some hockey. So, yeah, Columbus, they have had a lot of first round heartbreak, especially when the Capitals run when they came back and won 4 straight over Columbus, which is beautiful. But I'm not really a Tortorella fan. I mean, he's a quality coach, but he's a tool. So I really don't give him much credit. I just when I remember the playoffs with the Rangers when he said, their fans were louder and the crowd was chanting, "We are louder," or "We can't see." I was loving every minute of that. They ran that dude about the field, and that was beautiful.
Right. That makes sense. So the other series, well, it's not really a series. It's the other round robin that happened yesterday. I was really surprised by the result of this game. I thought Boston played really well all season. I thought they were going to wipe the floor with Philly, but if people remember, Philly was coming on strong at the end of the season, and they were going to overtake us probably for the division at the rate it was going. And we only were able to beat them by a point or something, even though division championship doesn't really matter when you reseed based on this new rule. But I'm still happy to have it over them. And I just thought they kind of dominated Boston. I was kind of laughing because I was rooting against Boston on 2 of my TVs, both in basketball and in hockey. It's I was just really shocked by that result. Did any of you guys see any of that game?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. Yeah.
So
when it comes down to a Brad Marchand moment, and having to hopefully see somebody take him out, I'm all for it. But no, I knew going into this particular Philly Boston match, this was going to be intense. This was going to be not dirty plays, but there were going to be a couple there, and it was going to be very, very physical. And I will say, Philly impressed me. They did not stop. They gave 60 minutes of hockey, physical, aggressive, and I felt like, I don't know if Boston was off because Tuukka Rask was out, and that kind of threw them for a loop a little bit. I mean, I think that, you know, sometimes maybe you have that superstition of like, you want a certain goalie to play, and the first game, especially when it comes to the playoffs and he's unable to because he's ill, kind of throws a little mojo off a little bit. I think that Boston played sloppy, but I think that they still were in it. I won't be surprised the second game if they come back, you know, super aggressive and whatever. But I was kind of hats off to the Flyers for how they played.
Yeah, it's I was reading here. Look, Brian, give me your thoughts real quickly on the game, and then I was going to explain why Tuukka Rask missed the game.
Yeah, I was going to say I was surprised Tuukka Rask missed the game too. Obviously, that was a huge loss for the Bruins, and Philly has just been on a roll, like you said. They were doing great before the pause happened, and they were really on pace to potentially win the division. So I mean, they were just on fire, and they just kind of kept going with this game, and they look really good right now. They're looking like one of the stronger teams. We'll see what the Bruins can do. They were the number one team, I believe, in the league before the pause, so we'll see what they can do coming back from this. But yeah, definitely a good start for Philly.
Carol, do you have something to say real quick?
Yeah, I mean, we know Boston is also without Pasternak, I believe. So, not having a leading score. Philly is a gritty team. As you said, they was coming on. It's like kind of like a perfect storm for Boston, not having a lead score. One of the more hungrier, feisty teams in the league that was, like you say, making a run before everything shut down and had the time to prep. So, yeah, Boston might be in trouble with not having their leading score. But, I mean, they can come back strong and try to get momentum back. But Philly, Philly is a hungry team, and Philly, has that push that they were playing well, and I think that they might be able to give Boston some trouble.
Actually, Boston, he played.
Yeah.
He did. He was a -3 on the game, so he actually was a negative for them in that game. Marchand was also a -2. So people were joking in cap forums that their best players, their top line, was actually a detriment for them in this game. But you're right, he did miss some time, so I'm sure that did have an impact on his play level. And to go back to why their goalie didn't play, he had a cough, and so he checked the box. So they give him a questionnaire for every player before they play, and he said, "Yes, I have a cough right now," and he did. And so it set off red flags. And once you say you have any cough whatsoever, you have to have 2 negative tests in a row before you can play again. So he said red lights all flashed in the system, and they basically put him in his own room, and they're like, to the dungeon with you. So he didn't get to play in that game, but he says he's back now. So obviously that'll have an impact. I do want to talk about a couple of these other series because some of these games were just wild. The Blues.
Scoring update in the Dallas Golden Knights game. Golden Knights were up 1-0. Dallas has scored 2 goals in 2 minutes and took the lead 2-1 with 10 minutes and 7 seconds left in the second period. So it's a brand new game.
Yeah, 42 seconds it says. 42 seconds.
I was into the show. I thought it was a little bit longer than that.
Wow. Yeah. So
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's we didn't really talk about some of the other teams, the West Coast, in last week's show, but we have a little bit of a longer segment tonight and with our hockey talk. So I thought I would bring it in a little bit. The Blues Avalanche is another one of those wild card series games. Or not wild card, the round robin ones. I apologize for my son screaming if you can hear that.
The Western Conference.
Right. So he doesn't like the Western Conference. Right. That Avalanche beat the Blues with 0.1 second remaining. It is the closest I've ever seen it hit to zeros ever. And I've seen some pretty like 0.5. We've seen we've seen a lot of 0.3 sometimes. I've never seen 0.1. They had to look at it for a long time because it was like, is there a sliver? Is there not? It was so hard for even me to tell. I was pausing it, rewinding. I was like, I have no idea. I don't want to be the guy I have to make this call, right? Because I could see it going either way. So I thought that it was still maybe barely touching the line. But in the end, they gave them the goal, but it was pretty crazy. The Avalanche were the lead up to 1 over the Blues in that game because of it. It was a 1-1 game, just crazy ending. And I'm gonna have to go let my dog out. But I don't know if anybody else saw any of that game, but they can let people know what their thoughts were.
Yeah, I didn't see the game at all, but that's a tough way to lose with 0.1 on the clock. But we're going, like I mentioned before, we're going to see some quality hockey because, like I said, they have time to prep. Everybody's healthy, no one's come up, with negative tests. We just talked about Tuukka, which we didn't know. So hopefully he's back with the team. So that means hopefully he should be in good health because we don't want nobody to risk their health for this game, even though we do love having hockey back. It is very satisfying because I did truly miss some hockey this offseason, this layoff or whatever. But what's been so far, Brian, I'll go to you first and I'll go to you, Ann. What's been the best part of this? I know we had 12 and a half hours of hockey on Saturday and hockey on Sunday. So I haven't had a chance to catch it. I was at work and doing another show yesterday, so I haven't been able to bask in the good times of all the hockey. So what is the best part of the playoffs or ramp up to the playoffs have you liked so far?
Well, I mean, I've loved really, like you said, how everybody is coming in fresh and, it's very clear everybody's ready to go. They've been waiting for months and, they're giving it their best in some of these games. And we've seen, a couple of upsets too. We saw the Blackhawks win. We saw the Arizona Coyotes win. Those are a couple of big upsets out west. It's been good to see. And of course, Montreal as well over Pittsburgh. I really enjoyed watching it. I'm an NBA guy first, but I will say I've really enjoyed the return of the NHL. It's been good to have hockey back. It's good to have, I love having sports on, the middle of the day. You can turn it on. There's probably an NBA or an NHL game on. That's awesome. It's really nice. It's just fun. I'm enjoying it so far. The return of hockey's been great so far. No complaints. And best of all, no positive tests so far.
Exactly. Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm on board after going so long without anything except the PGA to watch.
It's not a sport. It's just walking.
You know what?
It is.
Carol, you say it's not a sport. Have you tried it?
I couldn't even hit the ball off the tee. So I tried. I went to the driving range.
Because I could be wickedly competitive at a mini golf, but on actual like a golf course, I find it infuriating. So I admire their skill. We'll just leave it at that. But I am so glad to have hockey back. And I will say, I agree. Like, I think that the players, I will say hats off to the NHL for the bubble. I mean, it has been exactly what these players needed. It's, hey, I'm sorry that you have to be away from your family for 2 months, but they made it as comfortable as possible. Picture their family, all the amenities that they could need from home to kind of get them in the right mindset. And so I think that's just, awesome on that end. But I have been so impressed with watching teams that I don't usually watch coming out and given the 60 minutes of hockey. And that's exactly, what we all wanted to see. And so I think what stood out was the Blackhawks game, high scoring. It was like, whoa, like, where did this come from? And then, it was starting off high, and then the other, it was, I don't know, it was great. It was great to see the Pens lose. as usual. That's always a good thing. And with Montreal, and I will say that I have all of a sudden I've kind of become really angry with the Calgary Flames because of Chuck, or whatever, however you want to say his name. Dirty player, dirty hit, taking out Sheffield on the Jets, and so now I'm gonna pull for the Jets, which is kind of my mom's team, being from Winnipeg. But so it's been exciting to see.
So real quickly, I just want to go over some of the series. So the Calgary Flames, Winnipeg Jets, it's 1-1, and so that's an 8-9 matchup. And the Chicago Edmonton one, I was shocked, especially because Edmonton, again, so both teams, the only two teams that get to play in their own ranks, right, have lost their only game so far, which I thought was really interesting, especially because they were the higher seeded teams. Toronto just barely, it's an 8-9 matchup as well. But Edmonton's that's a 5-12 matchup, right? So the 12 is, one of the two worst teams in the league. And Montreal, another 12, beat the Pittsburgh. So in both 5-12 matchups, you have an upset so far. So looking at it from like the March Madness point of view, I thought that's kind of interesting. And then Arizona, also a lower seed, beating Nashville. They're up 1-0. And then Minnesota over Vancouver. They're also Minnesota's the lower seed in that one, and they put together a good game too. So some exciting stuff. Just taking a look at the games ahead. So I already mentioned that today there's still going to be a couple more games coming up. The Blackhawks play the Oilers again. That one's going to be at 10:30. The Penguins play the Canadiens in their game too. That's at 8 o'clock. Dallas Stars are on the power play now. They're still up 2-1 with 8:15 left in the second period. And then starting tomorrow, Panthers, Islanders, Coyotes, Predators, Blue Jacks, Maple Leafs, Flames, Jets, Hurricanes, Rangers, and Wild and Canucks will all be playing again. So just a huge slate of games. But going forward, I just want to point out the Capitals games, just because the round robin format. So again, Tampa Bay is going to play Boston on a little bit of a shorter rest. So nobody in the round robin tomorrow. The round robin comes back on Wednesday with Tampa Bay versus Boston. So that'll be an exciting matchup just because those two teams hate each other. And then August 6th, the next day on Thursday, you have the Caps versus the Flyers, and those two teams hate each other. So that'll be a bloodbath as well. And then August 7th, there's another day off. And then August 8th, we play the Bruins. So it's a little bit of a shorter turnaround for the Capitals. First time they will have played, just with only 1 day rest in between. And then the last one in that round robin format, Philly will play the Lightning on August 9th. And then August 10th, which is next week's show, nobody plays. So all of the best of 5 series will be over. All of the round robin series will be over. And next week, we're going to do a preview show for the next round where we can recap how some of these series all went and preview we'll finally know how the bracket will be set. And we'll be able to preview that, since that'll be the only day off of hockey, and then it'll be right back to the grind from then on. Some exciting things. I'm really excited about this week of hockey. I'm going to let Anna and Brian give some of their final thoughts on it, and Carol, you too. And then in about 5 minutes, we'll switch over to an NBA roundtable. So I'll start off with you. Well, I'll start off with you, Carol. What are some of your thoughts of this upcoming week?
It's definitely going to be interesting to see the way this falls out. And Dallas just went up 3-1 on Vegas, just scoring again. 7-10 left in the second period. Just a quick scoring update. But it's definitely, like I said before, it's going to be an interesting playoffs. You got hungry teams. You got a more level playing field with everybody being healthy, everybody recharge their batteries. Definitely, the coaches went and looked at film and studied stuff while they had all that time off to make adjustments and make their team better in whatever aspect they were lacking. And we're going to see some interesting things. We talked about Carolina and talked about some of these other teams that's hungry, that were so-called lower seeds that wouldn't have made the playoffs if it wasn't for this. Well, I believe they're going to make up for it when you see that, as you said, the compete level from the beginning. They're all into the games. They're all playing crisper than we expected. And we've seen some very entertaining hockey, and I feel like it's going to be that way going forward.
Yeah, Anna, what are some of your thoughts on the week ahead? There's a lot of hockey to talk about.
It's a lot of hockey, and I wholeheartedly believe that now is the time to don't count anybody out. These players have come out and they are ready, and I love it. And I love the fact that, yes, we're seeing fights. Yes, we're seeing, some penalty moments, but nothing, well, I shouldn't say because of the Calgary Jets game, but nothing major in regards to injuries, because I think that everyone is just they're ready to give it their all, and I think we're going to see some fantastic hockey. And just don't count the underdogs out in this situation. I think people get so used to hearing the same top names all the time, but I really think that there's going to be some underdogs that are going to shine through these playoffs, and we're going to be like, whoa, where did this team come from? And that makes it that much more exciting.
Yeah, Brian, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that this whole hockey bubble has a real March Madness feel to it. I think any underdog has a chance, and that's exciting to see, and that's honestly a little refreshing. I think it sets up for a really exciting rest of the tournament, the rest of the way. I'm excited to see how these round robin games go. I'm hopeful the Rangers can maybe salvage a game, but we'll see when it comes to that series. Other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing some of these other series play out, like even the Blackhawks Oilers series. I'm going to stay up a little bit late for tonight. I want to see how that goes. Yeah, it's just been awesome to watch so far. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it sounds good. Well, Anna, before we let you go, did you guys tape a Power Play Point podcast this week?
We did.
Sounds
we
good.
did. We were able to do a PowerPoint Play podcast last night, and I think Gil said he'll have it out tomorrow. We do the same thing, like we're recapping kind of feelings on players and how kind of not so much scoring how they did, but a little teacher and some, moments there where I'm giving some grades. But overall, we're in the same situation. We are just super happy to have hockey back and see healthy players, and fingers crossed it continues.
Yeah, well, we'll have 2 more Capitals games to recap next week, and we'll have a sense on how the playoffs all shake out, and a better sense on that. So anybody who wants to check out more of that when it airs, you can always go to sportsothp.com, click the Power Play Point podcast button, and it'll pop up with all their latest episodes, and you can check out more of Anna and Gil over there. And we really appreciate your time as always, and look forward to the playoff. I'm calling it the playoff real preview special next week, because it's the real, like, down to the 16. And so we're going to have maybe another extended NHL talk next week as well. Just because I think it's just so exciting, and if it goes anything like today went, I'm sure that we'll have plenty to talk about.
Absolutely. It was awesome. Thanks so much for having me on, and have a great rest of your episode.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, bye.
Have a good night. All
right. Sounds good. All right. So with that, I think we are going to switch gears to the Wizards Roundtable. And I'm going to start to bring in a couple of guests here. We got Tim, we got Arun, and the DC's People Champ. So we're going to bring all of them in. I'm also going to take control over the screen real fast. And then we can have live scoreboards up for it as well. And so I've got the current schedule up for the Wizards, and we can talk a little bit about that. Let me just see real quickly. Sorry, I'm changing my view over on the side. So hopefully people can see the live scores and stuff like that. But we've got a couple of games to break down tonight. And I think I have 3 people. Is DC People's Champ on, and I'm not seeing it? I can't. Hold on. I don't see him on yet. But we'll bring in DC People's Champ if not. But we'll first introduce the people that have joined us. Oh, there he is. Speaking of the champ himself, how are you doing today, Ken?
What's up, man? I'm doing fine. I literally just came back from the store. I had to rush to the store and come back so I could make it on.
No problem. No problem. We appreciate you making time for us. And we look forward to having you break down these Wizards games with us. If you don't know, DC People's Champ does a show on Fridays, the No Spots podcast. Well, they record on Fridays. It now airs a little bit later into the weekend. But yeah, they can check it out. No Spots Podcasts on Facebook and all the different podcast platforms as well. And they cover the wrestling that we don't get to cover on this show. But they really break it down great. And we always enjoy his NBA coverage as well. And we also have Tim Clark joining us again for the 5th season, talking Wizards basketball with us. And we also have Arun joining us, our statistician and just our overall general Wizard stats guy. And so we appreciate having the whole team with us tonight. We're just going to just dive right into it. We're going to break down these games real quick, and then we're going to talk about the NBA overall and your thoughts on how this sort of return to play has gone. But let's break down some of these Wizards games first. So the first one we're going to do is this Phoenix Suns Washington Wizards game. And then we'll break down the Brooklyn Nets Wizards game. And then we'll end out with the Indiana Pacers one that was just completed not that long ago. But let's start off with the Phoenix Suns one. I'll break down the scoring first, and then I'll get each of your opinions on that game. It started off well, or decently enough, but the Phoenix Suns did score an awful lot in that first quarter. I was happy to see the Wizards could put up 31. Scoring has been a question mark without some of their stars. But to allow 38 points in the first quarter does not help. And then in the second quarter, they allowed 29. And the Wizards only put up 21. They were able to make a bit of a game with it. Coming back in the third, they outscored the Suns 29-22. But then the Suns kind of ran away with it a little bit, outscoring them 36-31 in the fourth for a final score of 125-112. The leading scorer for the Wizards was Rui Hachimura with 21 points and 8 rebounds. Thomas Bryant had 10 points, 7 rebounds. And so overall, Jerome Robinson also put up 20 points for the Wizards, but they could not hold the Suns down. Devin Booker had a game with 27. On DeAndre, is it Aiden? 24 points. Yeah, and just they had scoring from all around. It wasn't necessarily like they basically had a bunch of players in double digits as well. So I'll start off with Ken. Ken, what were some of your thoughts on this Suns-Wizards matchup? Ken? DC People's Champ? Is he still alive?
Might it be frozen?
Yeah, he looks like he's frozen. So I don't know. Maybe he needs to jump back in. I don't know what happened there. All right, well, we're going to go to you, Tim. Tim, what are your thoughts on the Suns versus the Wizards?
Well, I think the Wizards clearly looked pretty sharp on offense, but as you mentioned, the defense was really bad, just like most of the year. And although Rui's stat line looked impressive by the end, he had some ugly moments, especially in the first half. So I think there was a lot of rust. And just looking at the box score, Ish Smith had the most shots on the team, which isn't he's not a bad shooter or anything, but a winning team probably doesn't have Ish Smith, the primary shooter. So I'm glad the young guys are getting the game experience, but you can tell every game is going to be a struggle, and they're going to struggle to be competitive with really any team in the bubble.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we got People's Champ back. So what are some of your thoughts on the Suns versus the Wizards?
It's been what I've been saying with this team for the last couple of seasons. It's all about defense, and the fact that they went down so much in the first quarter, it was one of those situations where you dug yourself a hole so deep, then you're trying to figure out how to climb out of it, and there you go. But it was good to see Rui Hachimura and Bryant really, play pretty well. You want that from the young guys and everything like that. So, but all in all, like again, and it's been the story for at least these first 3 games, all about playing defense, getting stopped, and taking advantage of your possessions and not giving them away.
I agree. I'll go to Brian. You next. What were some of your thoughts on this first matchup?
Yeah, just pretty much everything the guys have already said. Defense was just awful in this game for the Wizards, and just kind of gave me a sense that, if this game was a struggle for the Wizards, pretty much every game in the bubble is going to be difficult for them. Good game from Rui and Thomas Bryant, but not nearly good, not nearly enough for the win. Phoenix had a much better team effort in this game. Really, it was honestly a pretty easy win for Phoenix overall. Not a good performance from the Wizards.
Yeah, and Arun, the stats guy, what was your stats breakdown of this game?
Pretty much that the Phoenix Suns, they took advantage by getting to the free throw line a lot in this game. I think the Wizards defense overall, they were giving effort. They were just like committing silly fouls on the perimeter. The Suns had over 30 free throws in this one. And if you were picking like the top 10 starters like going into this game, Suns probably have the 4 best starters, including Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Ricky Rubio. But it's just, if you're just going by this game only, and Phoenix, they actually probably are like a legitimate playoff team in the Eastern Conference. They actually beat the Dallas Mavericks after they beat the Wizards. So this was a tough game for the Wizards, and as everyone said, like all the games in the bubble are going to be tough for the Wizards to come away with a win.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think that we've talked about this game enough. Let's get into the next one, which for me was a must-win game, and it was a little bit disappointing because these are the games we talked about last week that are almost like 2 games in one. Like, this is the team you're trying to chase, and it's the only time you're playing one of the 2 teams you're chasing, and so like you needed to get this win if you're trying to make ground on some of these teams here, and I was disappointed. The Nets came out with a 24-21 first quarter. Then in the second quarter, the Wizards sort of stormed back a little bit, 33-30 to make it tied at halftime. And then the Wizards took a 2-point lead after the third, outscoring them 31-29. But then Brooklyn outscored them by 10 in the fourth, 35-25. And then they ended up winning by a score of the Brooklyn Nets did by a score of 118-110. The leading scorer was Thomas Bryant. He put up 30. Troy Brown put up 22. But for the Nets, their leading scorer was Karis LeVert. Is that how you pronounce it? LeVert? Anyway,
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah, and 34. And then Joe Harris scored 27. And Jarrett Allen scored 22. So to have 3 scorers, with 22 or more points, probably not going to win a whole lot of games in that scenario. I'm going to start off with Brian on this one. What are some of your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, this was a must-win game, like you said, Robbie, for the Wizards to have any playoff chance. The Nets are, like we said last week, not nearly the same roster that we saw them have at the start of the season. Is completely different. And, some people have said that it would be better for the Nets to miss the playoffs and get a better draft pick, which I believe get a draft pick at all, because they would have gotten a pick from the Timberwolves if they missed the playoffs. So some people were saying it would be better for the Nets to lose out. And Arun actually said yesterday when this game started that it looked like that's what the Nets were trying to do. But I believe actually the Wizards started this game on an 11-0 run or some really good start to this game. But ultimately, the defense failed them again. A nice game from Troy Brown. I thought Troy Brown played really well for the Wizards in this game, and Thomas Bryant as well. But not nearly enough, and just kind of surprising to see some of the guys on the Nets have good games, other than LeVert, who's a stud. Caris LeVert is a really good young player in this league. But this was pretty much a do or die game for the Wizards, and they pretty much died. It wasn't good at all. Not a good result for the Wizards, and probably ends their playoff chances at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough climb from here for sure. All right. Champ, what are some of your thoughts on this matchup?
Thomas Bryant balled out. Okay. This is the game we've been looking for from this kid this season because he had a couple breakout games last season. This season, he's been kind of middle of the road. This was a good breakout game. I just hate the fact that it was wasted with this team losing and pretty much ending their playoff chances, as everybody else has said. I got a hot take. I don't want the Wizards to make the playoffs at this point. I want them to go into the off season so that when they come back next season, they'll have that dynamic backcourt of Beal and Wall, and then they'll have a great front court with Thomas Bryant and Rui Hachimura. And then that way they get a fresh start, everybody's healthy, and they go on a better run. I want them out now at this point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Tim, what are some of your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree completely with Ken there because I think long-term the best thing for the team is get these young players in some real game action against the better teams in the league and then still keep that draft pick for next year and keep Beal and Wall healthy. But this game was so disappointing because not only the start, but the Wizards led in the fourth quarter, I think, a couple of times, and they just couldn't stop anybody. We had that guy Chioza, who used to be on the Wizards, had a great game. Harris hit every big three. The Wizards are a terrible defensive team against good three-point shooters. And I really think if they won this game, they would have likely forced the playoff, and that's not going to happen now. So, you kind of circle this game before the schedule or when the schedule was released, and it was a big dud, and they had their opportunities. So, kind of disappointing, but they'll move on.
Yeah, especially when you see someone like Orlando put up some big numbers in their games because, all these teams are fighting for these two spots, and Orlando seemed to show up to play, but they also, the Wizards are shorthanded here. It's a kind of a glorified summer league for them, and that's okay because, I mean, so far they haven't said what the other 8 teams are going to get to do that didn't make this, right? So they miss out on potential summer league where they, get some of their younger players in the rotation. And that could end up hurting some of these other teams, especially if we don't know if the league is going to start on time or how next season is going to go or whether they're going to go back to the bubble, which there's even some talk they may do a bubble season or something, where, they continue this idea if they can't do a regular NBA season. So it'd be interesting to see how much that those other 8 teams lose out by not being a part of this bubble. And so I agree with you all that, win or lose at this point, this is just valuable experience for all of them. Arun, what are some of your thoughts on some of the stats of this game?
Yeah, the Wizards, as everyone said, their defense wasn't great. Then, like, the 3 starters that really didn't show up were Rui, only 9 points after a pretty good offensive outing the last game. They were game planning to stop him. 4 points by Bonga, only 5 points by Napier. And Jerome Robinson was 4 of 12 from the field with only 12 points. And Karis LeVert had 34 points. He also had 34 points in the last game against the Wizards. Harris made the U.S. Olympic for the World Championship team for 3-point shooting, and the Wizards allowed him to shoot 7 threes, and he made 6 of them. Jared Allen had 22 points and 15 rebounds. So Thomas Bryant had a great game on the offensive end. He still needs to pick it up defensively. I think it's probably best in the long run that the Wizards get the draft pick because they have a 20% chance of getting in the top 4. And I don't think this is, as everyone said, this is like a summer league or G League team right now.
For sure. All right, so let's get into the game that happened today. So we're kind of doing a post game now. And it was an interesting matchup against the Indiana Pacers. The Wizards took the lead after the first quarter, 21-20. Indiana played a really good second quarter. They outscored them 36-26. The Wizards were playing well to start the third, and then they kind of fell off there. And then in the end, the Pacers outscored them 34-21. The Wizards put together a pretty decent fourth quarter. They put up 32 points and only allowed 21 but at that point it was too little too late. The Pacers ended up winning 111 to 100. It did get closer in some points in the fourth quarter, but I never really thought that the Wizards were going to come away with a victory, especially with how that third quarter went. Some of the leading scorers for the Pacers was T.J. Warren, and then Malcolm, is it Brogdon?
Brogdon,
yeah, he had scored 20. And for the Wizards, Thomas Bryant had another decent game. He put up 20, but nobody else broke the 20-point mark. A couple other players were in double digits, but it just wasn't enough scoring overall or enough defense, depending on how you want to look at it in my book. We're going to start off with Tim on this one. What were some of your thoughts on this matchup?
I think it was another kind of disappointing game. I actually had big hopes for the German duo that the Wizards had going into this, I guess, tournament or whatever you want to call it, just because I had read that Bonga especially had been really dominant in practices, and he was one of the few players that was in a lot better shape after the COVID shutdown than before. And both him and Wagner have not played a lot of minutes and really not been very good. So that's disappointing, but hopefully we can count on them for next year, and acquiring them before the season was a good move. But I mean, the Wizards hung tough in the first half. I think you even texted us and said the Wizards are actually closer than the Caps, and then pretty much it collapsed after that. But
that did happen.
Still, mid-second quarter they were more competitive than you thought. And Warren again, probably the best back-to-back games of his career shooting. So who knew what maybe he had a bunch of hydrochloroquine or whatever. But he's doing great. So yeah, I mean the Pacers are a good team, and Wizards just couldn't hang with them.
Yeah, Champ, what are some of your thoughts on this matchup?
That third quarter was so sloppy. I mean, between the turnovers, at one point they had 10 turnovers that led to 20 Pacers points. That's not good at all. That means every turnover that you had turned into at least 2 points right there. So there's the points lost right there. Then the fourth quarter came, and all of a sudden they went on a 12-2 run. And I was like, okay, they could probably do this. But then again, they got sloppy. They kept doing it was too much pounding the pavement, pounding the rock, and not passing around, creating shots and creating opportunities. And it just led to them against a team like this who was playing so well defensively. That was the problem. And again, I go back to my hot take I just said earlier. This is a wash. Just this is a wash. Maybe get a win or two, but this is a wash. They need to get fresh for next season.
Yeah, Brian, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't see any of this game, but T.J. Warren has been the hottest player in the bubble. He scored 50 points in his first game, and then today another 34-point effort against the Wizards. The third quarter sounds just like a terrible job by the Wizards. It sounds like it was sloppy from the start. Just another disappointing game. This is one, like you guys said, they could have pulled this one off. It was only an 11-point loss, but ultimately, the defense lets them down, and just another tough loss, and what'll probably be a series of tough losses.
Yeah, I kind of expect us at this point to lose every game, but I hope that they're competitive and they can learn something for the future. Because looking at the schedule ahead, and we'll get to that in a second, it's a steep road for the Wizards to try to get back into this. They basically have to win out, hope for a lot of things to go their way, and they'll still just barely get within that 4-game threshold that they need to get. So for people who didn't follow from previous weeks, the Wizards' goal is to try to get within 4 games of whatever the AC team is. So it could either be Orlando or it could be the Nets. And I just don't see it happening. I was trying to calculate odds the other day. I was like, oh man, first of all, I thought they were already out of it initially. And then I was like, there's a path, but it's very, very slim. And basically they'd have to win out and ultimately to try to have any reasonable chance at it. But I think I'm with a lot of you guys in the fact that just, try to learn from this, use it as a growing experience. But before we sort of end this, Arun, did you have any thoughts on this matchup and any of the stats from this game?
Just that Indiana's also without its two best players, Victor Oladipo and Sabonis, and they're two all-stars, and they're like still a much better team than the Wizards are right now. So nothing really that everyone said. Like, Warren was had for cash considerations like this offseason, and now he's like balling with the Pacers, and that's good for him. And it'll be interesting to see if the Pacers are fully healthy and maybe they can make a run at the Eastern Conference.
Are those players that you mentioned, can they come back? Or are they in the bubble, or they're just not playing?
Sabonis left. He was in the bubble. He left with a foot injury, and maybe he can come back. And Victor Oladipo, he's in the bubble. He just isn't playing right now, but he did play in a preseason game.
Got it. Okay. Well, that is interesting. All right, so let's move away from the games that have happened, and we're going to pull up just the upcoming week. Let me just refresh this for a second. So the games that are going to happen before our next podcast they're going to play the 76ers on Wednesday. It's a 4:00 game. They play the New Orleans Pelicans at 8:00 on Friday, and then they play the Thunder at 12:30 on Sunday. So those will be some interesting matchups. And then the last two games that they will play, we can preview them next week, is the Bucks, which they had an interesting matchup last night. That will be on Tuesday. It's a 9 p.m. game. And the Celtics game is going to be on the following Thursday, but the time has been TBD right now for that one. I'm going to give each one of you a game real quick, and then I just don't want to give too much time to the upcoming schedule because I kind of think the Wizards are out of it already. And then I want to get each one of your guys' thoughts on a game or that you really have enjoyed in this NBA sort of relaunch, because I know there's been a bunch of great games, and so I thought that I'd give each one of you guys an opportunity to give your thoughts on that. And I apologize for Zach being quite loud. So Tim, I'm going to start with you. They're going to play the 76ers on Wednesday. What are some of your thoughts on that one?
Well, the Wizards are going to be big underdogs. The 76ers are a playoff team, and their roster, especially their starting five, is really strong. The one thing, though, with the 76ers, they've struggled the whole year to maximize the talent that they have. And I believe they lost their first game. I don't know if they played a second game yet, but they just don't look kind of sharp. And I mean, maybe I guess they're losing, and they lost to the Pacers already. So I mean, obviously you have to predict the Wizards' loss, but I think because the 76ers have problems gelling and playing together, they may take the Wizards lightly, and there's a small chance that the Wizards will win. And I think the Wizards' one of the best wins of the year, they already beat Philadelphia at home. It feels like years ago, but only, several months ago pre-COVID. So, maybe we match up well against them, and we can steal a victory here. But I wouldn't bet my house on it.
Right. I'm going to give the next game to Brian here. They're going to play the Pelicans again Friday at 8 p.m. I'll pull up the Western Conference. So the Pelicans are in the 11th spot, so they're fighting for a spot. They're still closer to being able to trigger the playoffs. So obviously it's going to be a tough matchup. Brian, what are some of your thoughts again about the Pelicans?
Yeah, the Pelicans have to win pretty much every game because they're in a tight tangle with the Spurs and the Trailblazers for that last playoff spot, and the Grizzlies as well, who currently have the 8th spot. So they have to win pretty much every game. And I think they'll probably win this game against the Wizards. The Pelicans, I believe, have lost their first 2 games in the bubble, but this is a game they should probably win. We'll see if Zion Williamson, his minutes have been carefully watched during the first couple of games in the bubble, and that's probably cost the Pelicans a little bit to not have, the franchise cornerstone not out there in big moments. But I think they'll win this game at least against the Wizards. I think this is a good opportunity for the Pelicans to make up some ground in the Western Conference standings.
Yeah, so up on screen right now, I have that they're tied currently in the third quarter with about 5:25 left, at least according to Google, in a pretty close game with the Grizzlies, and they're pretty close in the standings as well. So it'll be interesting to see. They're pretty far away in the here, but I think that their wins are pretty close, right? Yeah, they're only 4 games separating them right now. So it'll be an interesting matchup. For sure in that one. Then I'm going to give Ken the next matchup against the Thunder, 12:30 matchup there. And what are some of your thoughts on the Thunder and playing them?
Well, I mean, the Thunder are currently a playoff team at this point in time. And anytime you play a team in the Western Conference in the top 8, it can almost be a certain loss. And the way this team is playing, because they don't have their cornerstones like Beal and Wall, they don't have Davis Bertans in that 3.
I think we cut out there for a second.
And Bonga.
I think you're back.
And
now.
Ish Smith can also start putting up some good numbers, as well as play freaking defense. If they could do that, they can win this game and really put the Thunder on notice. Like, hey, you're not invincible here, and maybe give themselves a little bit of a spark going into what the last 2 games.
Yeah, for sure. And so Arun, I'm going to let you just give your overall thoughts on the week ahead. Do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
Just for the Bucks game, the Wizards, theoretically they have a chance because the Bucks should be resting their players, and the Bucks would maybe want the Nets to play the play-in games, but even that's a stretch because I think the Bucks don't really care if they play the Nets or the Wizards, and they should sweep either of those teams. But it is a possibility that the Wizards go against the Bucks without Giannis and maybe some of their other key players. But the Bucks have already blown out the Wizards without Giannis, and they beat them in overtime when Giannis fouled out of that game earlier in the season. So it's probably a loss, and I hope they don't make the playoffs at this point, but we'll see.
Do you have any more thoughts on either the Sixers, Pelicans, or Thunder games before we switch segments?
The Pelicans, I don't know. If they keep losing, they might not play Zion, because they lost their first 2 games, and if they lose to the Grizzlies, maybe they won't play Zion because they're already not playing him in crunch time in crucial games. So, but yeah, that should still be a loss for the Wizards. I'd probably take their entire starting 5 before I took anyone on the Wizards right now.
Right. So I think that'll end our Wizards talk part of this segment. We're just going to talk a little bit general NBA, and then we're going to get into some baseball talk after that. I'm going to let each one of you guys maybe talk about a game that you have watched, since there's been so many great NBA games in the bubble. I've been really impressed. We talked in the first hour about how impressed I was with the compete level and the interesting games in the NHL tournament. I've been equally impressed by this NBA, sort of almost more like March Madness feel style, just sort of everyone's together, and each additional game seems to have a little extra weight than a regular season didn't. I was talking to my dad. He hates the digital fans behind it. I don't particularly mind it, but it's interesting. And it's really interesting that ESPN has this complex that has so many different stadiums in it that they could do this, because unlike hockey, where they only have 2 rings, they've been able to play in, I believe, 3 or 4 different stadiums in this one area. And so I thought it's kind of cool that they could have 3 games going potentially simultaneously and still all be a part of the bubble. I'm going to talk just quickly about that, the Lakers-Clippers game that started it off. I thought that was an incredible matchup. What a great way to sort of start this. I know that LeBron didn't have an amazing game. Kawhi kind of kept the Clippers in it at points, but I just thought overall, what a great way to sort of launch this. But there's been a lot of other really great matchups as well. So I'll let some of you guys talk about some of your favorites, and then I might bring up a couple of other games if they're not brought up as well. But let's start off with Tim. What other NBA matchups or games have you seen or what are your thoughts on this NBA restart?
Well, I'm glad you're letting me go first because I think I'm not the only one. But that Friday night crazy game, the Battle of Texas, Houston versus the Mavericks. That game had zero defense, but unlike a lot of Wizards games, I think players just made shots. There was really sharp offense. Dallas really blew it at the end of regulation. That's going to be a really tough loss for them, especially as they're fighting for seeding. But Luka had a great game. I think a triple-double. I might be wrong about that. But it was just an awesome overtime game. Tons of points, tons of one-on-one isolation play. But as a casual fan, it's great to see, like you said, that competitiveness. And I feel like the players in all the sports in the bubbles, they're probably really antsy and kind of frustrated with not having ladies around. And, they're taking out that competitive fire in the games, which is great.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that was a really great matchup. I agree. Brian, pick a game that you really liked so far.
I really liked the Celtics Trailblazers game yesterday. I was bandwagoning. I've been bandwagoning the Trailblazers a little bit. So I'm a big fan of Lillard and CJ McCollum. And they were down big in this game. At one point, they were down 24 points. And they came back and actually took the lead several times on the Celtics. But really big games from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were able to give the Celtics the win. This was really a fun back and forth game. It came down to the wire. I echo what Tim said about the game on Friday night, Rockets Mavericks. That game was great, going to overtime and everything, and Lakers Clippers to start it all off. Really, I think the play has been great. It's really been crisp. Everybody seems to be playing at 100%, like we said about the NHL earlier, and it's just great to see. And I think the virtual fans are kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool the way the NBA is doing it. I don't like the way they're doing it for baseball on the Fox broadcast, but overall, I like the way the NBA is doing it with the way they have virtual fans. They even had Paul Pierce was one of the virtual fans during the Celtics Trailblazers game yesterday. So I think the virtual fans are fine.
Those got to be pre-recorded, right? But it's kind of funny because they must have some preset ones because, like, the second the camera went on him, he, like, changed his facial reaction. But I couldn't tell if it was, like, he's zooming in or they just, like, pre-planned that recording to change or whatever. But I thought it was interesting nonetheless. I don't know how they do it or what their thing is, but I definitely like how they've got a bit of the home court that they put into it as well to give a little bit of home court feel. And it's interesting to see how it's different between basketball and hockey. Hockey, it's like whenever a goal is scored, you have whoever scored it, their horn and their graphics go up. So it's not really like the home one, So, but in basketball, all the stats and all the graphics and stuff like that, it really feels like you're in that person's or in that team's home stadium. So that's pretty cool. All right, Ken, you get to pick the next game. What game did you find exciting or interesting that was not a Wizards game?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I haven't really watched much of the restart because, I mean, during this pandemic era, there's been so much wrestling and, with the podcast moving to the new platform, I haven't had really a chance to watch any games. But I've been noticing on social media, a lot of people have been killing that kid from the Magic for not kneeling and then tearing his ACL. You people are nasty. Y'all all get nasty awards. That's wrong. Who cares if the kid kneeled or didn't kneel? He got injured and people are celebrating it because he didn't kneel. And I'm like, y'all are nasty. Let that kid live, man.
Right. So I do have to say it was interesting that his rationale was that Jesus said not to do it, and then like some divine injury happened. So I do think of, I don't want to say karma, but it's just weird, right? I'm not going to ever root for anything like that. Obviously, it's a horrible thing, but it just, the timing was very, very strange for sure. But
it was strange. But I have been noticing some of the action, I will say, but I've been mostly paying attention to the Wizards just to see what they can do and see what kind of young nucleus they have.
Right. Arun, have you checked out any other games or any other series you want to talk about?
Yeah, I checked out most of those games that we're talking about, but I'll just mention the Raptors versus the Lakers. I thought that was an interesting game. The Lakers are, like Robbie pointed this out, they're 0-11 in their last 11 games against the Raptors, but more recently they have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, so like I think things would be different. But Kyle Lowry had 34 points and 14 rebounds, and LeBron and Anthony Davis had like 36 points and like 16 rebounds combined. So it's kind of a crazy game in that sense, that the Raptors defense is still going strong. And if they had Kawhi Leonard, they'd still be the favorites pretty easily. But as it stands, the Clippers are probably, even though they lost to the Lakers earlier, as you guys mentioned, I think the Clippers will get Lou Williams back and Harold back, and they only lost to the Lakers by 2 points. That's probably like the battle of LA's and Milwaukee, and maybe Toronto can make a run at the East. Who knows?
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have a ton more to cover next week with those 3 Wizards games, and then maybe we'll even do another one of these segments where you guys can bring up games that you guys like, because there's just so many good ones. I've just been flipping back and forth, and I've come across a bunch of good ones. I was trying to think of like yesterday, I saw a couple that were just really close. I think it was the Rockets game is what it was. And so I thought that was a really good game against the Bucks, and I thought that was pretty incredible. I thought the Greek Freak Antetokounmpo put up 36 points, but they still found a way to lose, and I just thought the Beard just played out of his mind at the end of that game, and he was able to put up 24, Westbrook 31. I think the Rockets will definitely be a team. Even though they're kind of middle of the pack in the West, they're still going to be a team that people are going to have to contend with. And the Bucks, for as good as they've played all season, I think they might be one of the teams that gets hurt by this long layover. They were just sort of on a roll for a lot of the season, and I haven't been so convinced, at least yet, that they are that same team. Obviously, they've had some injuries and some issues, but it'll be interesting to see if the Bucks, if this layoff really ends up hurting them. And we'll be able to talk more about that next week. I'm going to stop our screen share right there. I'm just trying to bring in a couple additional stats so that people can get some visuals while we're talking. And I really appreciate all of you guys for taking your time. I'm going to give each one of you guys a final segment, and then I'll let you guys go. I'm going to probably keep Brian for a second to talk baseball after this. But Tim, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to have basketball and NHL and I guess baseball for a little while until they call it quits. It's been tough during coronavirus, so I think we're all just happy to have sports back in some format. And there's all the kind of political drama, but I think most importantly, we get to watch games all day, and I kind of love how it's like NCAA tournament format where it basically starts at noon and you get some kind of sports all day. So, if you're furloughed or whatever, at least you have something to do. And if you're working at home like us, it's a good way to ignore your email for a little bit. So I guess shout out to sports for putting money over everything else.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.
And we'll then go to DC's People Champ. Let us know what's happening on the podcast and your final thoughts.
Well, I'm currently checking out Raw right now while I'm talking, but this week we're going to talk about everything that happened this week, including AEW's Women's Tag Team Cup tournament that started tonight. They had 2 matches there, and I'm leaking this here. I'm getting this here exclusively on SportsOTHP podcast. There's going to be a special podcast going to come out this weekend. It's going to be the first in a series of interview ones that I started to do now that I'm on this here new platform. So be on the lookout for that one. But of course, the regular podcast will be up Sunday. The interview podcast will most likely be up either Friday or Saturday.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you as always being a part of this roundtable, and I look forward to that podcast coming out soon.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. All right, Arun, final thoughts before we let you go.
Yeah, like I'm surprised just basically Beal hasn't been considered at all for an all NBA third team. I'd rather have him over like probably Ben Simmons for sure this season, but I guess people are looking at like rebounds and Simmons led up 53 points to TJ Warren, so he's not like at all. He's a good defender, but I don't think he's like a game changer. But that's pretty much it. And I'm wearing my Gilbert Arenas jersey today, the gold ones that are not that light, but I'm still wearing that. So hopefully the Wizards are better in the future. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I noticed that Gil Zero golden jersey that you're wearing, so I appreciate it. I also went with a throwback today with the 2001 playoffs for the Capitals. As you can see, they've got the Penguins versus the Caps. Unfortunately, that series did not go well. But anyway, I appreciate you joining us, and I look forward to talking more hoops next week. All right, so I think we're going to bring in back Carol. And cool.
What's going on? I'm back. Had to do a little switch up on there after that extensive NBA coverage. Excuse me. Appreciate the roundtable as always, breaking down everything and anything NBA. You know, it's a lot of stuff going on. I wanted to mention the situation with what is it, Lou Brown? I forgot. I think
Lou Williams.
Lou Williams. I don't know where I got Lou Brown from, but yeah, with that whole situation with him leaving the bubble, was supposed to be like a family situation. He was supposed to be leaving for. He ended up going to an adult entertainment establishment, and it didn't come out until a picture on social media of him at the club taking a picture with a patron, and his excuse was he went for the wings. Now, I spoke about this yesterday showing at the bar radio, and I got, we went in detail of what kind of wings he was looking for. But what did you guys take about that real quick while we wrap up this NBA on him risking, his teammates and other NBA players to go get some wings and not say nothing until they came out on social media? To me, that was ridiculous.
I like that Arun came back for this segment. So I'm going to Arun because he clearly has an opinion on this.
I know Arun will. He's like, hold on, I got to come back.
I got to come back for this. So, Arun, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, the wings are named after Lou Williams, so maybe he did go back for the wings. But as Kenny Smith said, maybe he came back for some legs and thighs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew Arun would have something way more clever than I was going to come up with. So that's why I'm happy he came back. I think it's hilarious, but obviously super risky. And, I think it's also interesting that the NBA, and the NHL have had to make sure that people explicitly know that yes, we're in this bubble. You still need to wear a mask. And I think that probably came from this because it's there's other people coming in and out of the bubble, even if they're not leaving. And so they still need to, take it seriously. And it's pretty ridiculous. And, I know we're going to switch to baseball. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of how did Miami get all those positive cases? Did they go to a bar or an interesting nightclub?
I was going to say, that's the rumor. The rumor floating around is that the Marlins went to a strip club. And the rumor about the Cardinals is that they went to a casino.
Right.
So,
now, hold on.
So who knows?
The Marlins got it. They were in Philly, right?
They weren't. But they went to Atlanta. Yeah, they went to Atlanta before the season started.
Oh, I was about to say I could have swore they were coming back from Philly when they got
they got quarantined in Philly, but they I think picked it up in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering. I'm like, you're in Miami with some of the hottest strip clubs. You go to Philly to go to. It didn't make sense, but Atlanta, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I just had to ask you.
Right. So, but it's how can this even go on? I just don't. I just would talk. We're now migrating to baseball a little bit, but I don't see how this season can be completed. I know it's some isolated incidents, but so now Miami has to field a half team, right, with some additional minor league players.
Well, are they playing yet?
Yeah. So they've gotten cleared to play. So all the people infected go back to Miami, and then they're joined with additional I always want to say scab players, but they're not. They're obviously minor league players. But like basically a half team of minor league players is going to have to join them, and then that's going to be competitive, right? To be like, it's like if this happens where whole teams have to be made up of these minor league players, like wins and losses are going to be so skewed by this, right? Like there's no way that this, like, I don't know how this works. It's beyond me.
Again, I don't think the season's going to go through full effect, and I feel the same thing about football. With the travel aspect, that's where the NBA and the NHL have got it, nailed down. There's nowhere to travel. You can't account for the public. So even if they are wearing masks or they go out, they're traveling in different hotels and different stuff like that. So I honestly, I don't think the baseball season is going to go through the whole thing. Just like Manfred said, that if it continues to go this way, there's a possibility the season might get shut down. And I'm giving the NFL maybe 3 to 4 weeks that it try to do it. But I feel like with the travel aspect, is going to is the X factor, and I think that's when you're going to have a lot more cases, because these players are going to be interacting and coming in contact with different people in different places that might not be practicing the safe, cleaning up and keeping a mask on and doing all the proper protocols. So I think NHL and NBA have nailed it. Unfortunately, the MLB and the NFL have left some things to be desired in their treatment of this situation.
To piggyback off that.
Right, go ahead, Robbie. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, the NFL, I think it's going to be even worse, right? Because, like, at least in the MLB, like, they're trying to keep it, central, all central, east, all east. So you could contain an outbreak of a couple of teams maybe that way somehow. But in the NFL, if you're, traveling cross country and all the divisions play each other, basically in 4 weeks, one team could touch, 16 teams, right? I mean, just in how they all play with each other in contract tracing and all that. So I just don't, and all the travel that has to happen for that. And also the physical play of it, at least in baseball, they're interacting a little bit at certain, tagging people out or whatever. But NFL, you're going to tell me you're not going to breathe on them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're right in each other's faces. They're sweating on each other. They're, they're grabbing each other's jerseys. Like, I don't see how any of that works.
I saw some helmets, they were fitting with masks to, that fit onto the helmet to help cover the guy's face. I've seen some of that. I'm not sure how many players are going to have it, if that's going to be everyone mandated. But I did, most of them wear gloves anyway when they play the game. So there's going to be a lot of, I guess, hand sanitizer and bleach on the sidelines, I guess, so they could keep everything as sterile as possible. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially with football, like you say, Robert, with the physical contact on each and every play, sweating, sometimes blood. So I would hate to say it, but we might not see football this year.
I definitely think they'll start because there's too much money for them not to start it, but I don't think it'll end. In a champion, I don't see it going, 16, 17 weeks, whatever it is, and it's just. I think the frustrating thing about NFL and the MLB is it's just the lack of preparedness, it seems. Like they have these, the fact that us who do a lot of research on these things have very little understanding of what they're going to do. Imagine the layperson, the people who don't do the research, right? They have no idea what's going on, right? And the players in the NFL have argued that they don't know what's going on. And that's like, they want to play, but they don't know enough information, and they're about to start training camp.
Yeah, well, at least they still have a little. I mean, like I said, for training camp, they're doing testing daily for the first 2 weeks. Since there is no preseason games, I think they're looking at it kind of like the hub situation, that each team would be at their facility that should be clean and they should be doing the protocol. So I don't think it's going to, like you say, the preseason and training camp, I think it's going to be cool because they're all quarantined together. But once the season starts, like you said, the traveling and going to different places and touching the whole, I didn't even think about the aspect of, playing other divisions, and then, they play another team in their division, and boom, 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 they can spread like wildfire. So that's a very valid point I didn't even think about, Robbie.
It would have made more sense for them to do like the divisional bubbles, like have all the East teams play in one bubble, have all the Central teams, all the South teams, all the West teams. But, instead they decided not to do it. And now we're stuck with this. And I'm talking about football specifically, but same thing with baseball. I just don't see any way we complete it at this point. There have already been so many issues, and I just don't know. It's definitely a dicey situation. It changes day by day, almost minute by minute. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that what they should have done for the NFL, I like the 4 divisional alignments. You play every team in your division twice, and you play every team in the AF, if you're in the NFC, the AFC equivalent of it, twice. And that gets you at least, quick math, that gets you to 14 games. Not a full 16-game season, but it does contain it. And it's close to a 16-game season. And you could have, done it that way, and at least it mitigates.
Why you didn't call Roger Goodell? Why did you hold on to it just now?
I know. Breaking news: Robbie solves the NFL's problem.
Call me about these things. Call the right people next time.
Right.
Head off. They probably could have used that.
We'll have to share this podcast later with them and be like, "We've solved your problem."
Send it to the NFL.
This is what y'all should have did. Y'all should listen to Robbie G.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's quickly just get to some of these baseball games. I know we only got 4 games to break down. I unfortunately didn't get to watch any of them, but I'll let you, Carol, break them down real quick. And then it's just kind of a weird baseball alignment with these teams have such different amount of games played.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into that fact. It took me a while just to get these stats together, trying to figure out how many games the Nats have played. They're currently sitting 3-4. We talked about the series against the Marlins that got postponed. They were supposed to have this weekend. So they've only played 7 games. Last week they had a 4-game series with Toronto, which was, kind of funny because Toronto can't go home. So all 4 games were played at Nationals Park, but the last 2 games was with the Nationals as the visiting team, which means they batted first, which led to some interesting outcomes. If you looked at the box score, you might have got a little confused. But it was a 4-game series. The Nats were able to split 2-2. First game was unfortunate, a 4-1 loss. They gave up basically 4 solo home runs and couldn't muster enough offense to counter that. It was a hot day at the park, and you know how it is when it's a hot day. If you leave the ball hanging, leave it in the middle of the plate, it's going a long way. And we talked about it last week with the Yankees, how they, their powered them through the series. The same thing happened in the first 2 games of this series with Toronto. We're going to speak about this one. Anibal Sanchez took the loss. He gave up all 4 earned runs, all 4 solo home runs. He had 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, and he lasted 5 innings, giving up 4 earned runs. The winning pitcher was Ryan Borecki. He only went an inning of the third, gave up 1 hit, no earned runs, 2 strikeouts, and a walk. Brian, did you get a chance to catch this game since Toronto is one of the teams I know you hate in your division?
Yeah, no, I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see this game in particular, but that is a tough break for Sanchez. It's a lucky break that he gave up 4 home runs, and they were all solo home runs. That kind of kept the Nationals in the game. But Sanchez is one of the more reliable arms out of the Nationals starting staff, and this is a disappointing loss for sure. But at least they were able to bounce back. I mean, this was definitely a frustrating one.
Yeah, Sanchez is one of those guys that, you want him a little bit of wear and tear. That's when his pitches break better, and he has that deceptive speed. Doesn't have the killer fastball anymore, but he can go from 91, 92 and drop it as low as 70, 71 on some of his pitches, which is always a good way to get a guy out. Arun, did you get a chance to check out any of this game since I see you sticking around for the baseball segment?
Yeah, I checked out some of this game, but yeah, the offense was just not really they really missed Soto in this one as usual, and then during this game, during this whole time, Soto's like, I didn't test positive, and he's going to come back, and just they only scored 1 run.
He can't wait to get back on the field. Just a quick update in the Penguins Montreal game. Penguins are up 1-0, and there's a little fisticuff action going on right now.
Ooh.
I didn't see what happened, but it's getting physical on the boards. And we didn't even talk about that dirty cross-check that Sidney Crosby was doing in the crease that no one made.
Oh, I just saw the replay. They just hit Crosby in the head. The stick came up.
That one, I think we just saw the retaliation for that cross-check that came in that. So
right.
And the good way to be on it.
And the other game is 3-3, I believe, in the third period. Going back to that Dallas Stars game, I have that on the other TV, but right now it seems to be oh wait, somehow my game got switched. I'm going to switch that back. But that game is pretty close as well.
All right, well, let's go. We'll keep updated on some of this hockey. We cover it all. We got the hockey round robin playoff format going. We talking about baseball. We talking about basketball. We got it all covered for you. The second game of the series was another unfortunate 5-1 loss, powered by more home runs by Toronto. They have a very potent lineup. I had no idea how potent their lineup was until I kept on seeing balls leaving the yard, and that wasn't a good look. And ironically, Tanner Roark got the win for Toronto. He looked, pretty good. He had control of his pitches. He, which is like I was speaking about Sanchez, which is normally for guys that have a lot of control and change speeds a lot. It's normally harder for them to have a good stuff when they first started. They're more of a pitcher that generally plays better. The more wear and tear during the season they get, that's when they have more control over their pitches. But he was definitely in control. He went 5 innings, giving up 3 hits, 1 earned run with 5 strikeouts and no walks. Austin Voth took the loss for the Nats. He went 5 innings, giving up 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 of those earned. We've talked about some of the defensive issues that the Nationals had with errors and everything. I didn't even recognize the infield at one point in some of these games because I was like, who is that guy? But that's definitely something they need to work on because errors. I spoke about Starlin Castro. He had a couple of plays in that game that cost the team runs blatantly. He had a sure out that he threw the ball high, the man on first, got on first, extended an inning, and I think they hit a home run after that, a 2-run home run with that man on. So they definitely have some things to be desired in the field. You don't have, Zimmerman out there. We missed Tony Two Bags on third base. So that also goes to the offense as Arun alluded to earlier. Did you get a chance to check out any of this game, Brian, or you were checking out your Yankees?
Yeah, I'm usually watching the Yankees, but I'm even watching them right now. But good for Tanner Roark to come back and get a win against the Nationals. I'm sure that feels really good for him after being traded away. And like you said, the Blue Jays have a really potent lineup led by some players who were sons of former major leaguers, Cavan Biggio and Vlad Guerrero Jr. They're both studs. Yeah. Bo Bichette as well, Dante Bichette's son. All their dads used to be in the major leagues, and the kids are good. They are
all of those guys playing, Brian. Damn it.
Yeah, they are definitely ones for the future, and the defense for the Nationals too. Like you said, I love Starlin Castro. He used to be on the Yankees, so I'm a fan of his. But you can't make defensive errors. There seems to be a lot of growing pains in the Nationals infield. Just based off of what we've seen in these first couple of games so far. Struggling defensively for sure.
Yeah, I saw that. They had Cabrera at first base, Kai Boom at second. I don't even know who was at third. Trey at shortstop. Trey has been playing some good ball in the field too.
Yeah, other than Trey Turner. I was going to say Trey Turner. Trey Turner's the exception.
Yeah, everybody else, like having Cabrera at first. Cabrera's normally at second base, and Howie Kendrick normally played first. But yeah, they've been switching things up, I guess, trying to find a place. Kai Boom is out there. A lot of pressure on him. He was supposed to be taking over at third. Like I said, I saw him at second the other day. So they're trying to figure some things out. Arun, did you get a chance to check any of this game out?
Yeah, just like Turner, Eaton, they have like most of the hits. They have 3 of the 4 hits, and everyone else not so much. Just 1 hit by Castro, and everybody else did not get a hit or a walk.
Yeah, the offense has really been, up and down, sputtering, but going into the next game.
Real quickly, I have a scoring update. The Vegas Golden Knights just scored 3 goals in 5 minutes. And so they've taken a 4-3 lead with 4:40 left in the third period. The last goal was very controversial. The guy skating through the crease knocked into the goalie stick. The goalie stick went flying. Then the guy who knocked the goalie stick out scores. Immediate washout. Goes to coach's review. They overturn it and say it was incidental contact. Then they make the goal stand. And that's how they're taking a 4-3 lead again with 4 minutes left about in the third period. So I'll let you know if anything else happens in that.
That's a crazy game because they were up 1-0 and Dallas scored 3 in a row, and then Vegas come back and scored 3 more. Yeah, that incidental contact, they lucky fans not in the stands. That's all I got to say. They might have came over the glass on that one, man. But getting back to the Toronto series, the Nats lost the first 2. But as we mentioned, they were able to split and get a series tie. Game 3 was a 4-0 extra innings. It ended in the 10th inning. As I mentioned, they were the road team in the last 2 games, so they got 4 runs in the top of the 10th, which we'll talk about in a little while. Daniel Hudson earned the victory. He went an inning and 2/3, giving up no hits, no runs, with 3 strikeouts. Shun Yamaguchi took the loss. He went 1 inning, giving up 2 hits, 4 runs. 4 runs. 3 of those earned with 2 strikeouts and 2 walks. Yeah, this was a interesting game. I actually did watch almost all of this because it was Scherzer was out there doing his thing. I believe he had, I want to say 11 strikeouts. I'm not sure, but it was an interesting game because it was a like a pitcher's duel going back and forth. The Nats had a couple of opportunities with the bases loaded to try to get some runs on the board, but unfortunately they didn't. Got to extra innings, had the bases loaded again, and actually cashed in, and were able to get the 4-0 victory in not overtime, in extra innings. I got my sports mixed up, but Brian, did you check any of this game out? Did you see this exciting 0-0 game going into the extra innings, man?
Yeah, Scherzer pitched really well, obviously, like he usually does for the Nationals. And it's, obviously really weird that they were the home team, the road team at Nationals Park. I can't get over that. The Yankees are actually going to be the home team in Philadelphia on Wednesday due to the storms that are coming up the East Coast. Yeah. So I'm going to have to get used. It's just weird scheduling. It's 2020. Everything's, completely messed up and weird. But, yeah, I think this was, a good win for the Nationals, especially after the last 2 days. Good road win. And, I think good to get the win in extra innings for sure.
That's so crazy that all 4 games were won by the road team, but all 4 games were in Nats Park.
Nats
right?
Park, yeah.
Crazy things that happen. Everyone, what did you say about this game? Did you get a chance to check it out?
Yeah, I watched most of this game too, and yeah, Brian pointed out before this game that the Nats were 0-7 against the Blue Jays, and there was like some Canadian curse, and I guess one way to break that is playing like DC, like a road game in DC.
They haven't been able to beat a Canadian team. I love these curses, man. That's hilarious. But yeah, it was a good game. I'm a defensive guy, so I love a good pitcher's duel. I love a game that go extra innings and be able to break it open and win it. 4-0, clear the bases. I didn't get into the score, and I forgot to pull that up, but I watched it. I can't remember right now, so we're going to move on to the next game. It was a victory, and that's all that matters. Last game of the series, Nats were able to win that one 6-4. Ryan Harper earned the win. Went 1 inning 2/3, giving up 1 hit, no earned runs with a strikeout. Ryu, I don't know if I got that right. The ex-Dodgers pitcher that would always give the Nats problems. The Nats handled him pretty well. He only lasted 4 1/3, giving up 9 hits, 5 earned runs with 5 strikeouts and 1 walk. I actually remember the part of the game with Kurt Suzuki. I believe it was the top of the second. Yeah, he threw out a guy at second. They were on the verge of trying to get a rally going, trying to get some runs on the board. Kurt Suzuki threw out the guy at second and the top of the second, and then came back and I believe got an RBI double in the bottom of the inning to help the Nats, fuel the offense for the top of the inning. They were on the road. Trying to remember that. But that's what impressed me about Kurt, just going back to the postseason, how well he played, going through all the injuries and the stuff that he went through. And, it's always good to have those veterans. And I believe last year he didn't throw out one guy trying to steal until the World Series when he did it at crucial time, throwing out Altuve at third. And the fact that he already got his first put out during the regular season, that was cool with me. But Arun, we'll go to you first this time. Did you get a chance to check this game out, and what was your overall take of this 4-game series with them being able to get the split after losing the first 2?
Yeah, like overall, these last 2 games, it was just like timely pitching. Like the Blue Jays left like some guys on base. Like they had like runners on second with nobody out, and they didn't score like late in this. And then Castro really carried the the Nationals in this one with 4 hits. Suzuki, yeah, he had that excellent throw out, and then he almost like in the last out of the game, which was a strikeout, he bounced it to Cabrera on like the strikeout throw out, which ended the game. Luckily, Cabrera caught it. Overall, good win for the Nats.
No doubt. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I didn't see any of this game, but definitely a good win. Sounds like the offense got a bunch of timely hits, especially Starlin Castro, and good timely pitching, and a good win to have against a young, hungry Toronto team. It's good to even bounce back after losing those first 2 games to win the next 2. I think is really good for the Nationals, who are trying. Every game matters in the season, so to win in games like that, I think is really important.
Very true, Robbie. Did you get a chance to check out that last game or any of the series?
I didn't. I've been watching way too much NBA and NHL. I only got 2 TVs. But I do have a quick scoring update. They got an empty netter, so they ended up scoring 4 goals in a row by William Karlsson. I also want to point out that Nate Schmidt got a goal and an assist in that third period, former Capital.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Quick going forward, trying to look at this. Robbie, you had a schedule up for this? I'm checking my app now. I didn't get a chance to get the schedule for that.
I have it, yeah. You want me to go through it with it?
Oh, right ahead. See, that's why we make a good team, Robbie. You are always a step ahead, man.
So, no problem. So it's a weird schedule. Over the next 12 games, we are playing the Mets 6 times, and we're playing the Orioles 6 times. So it's very, very strange. So I believe it goes, hold on, it's Mets first, right? Yeah, it's Mets first, then Orioles, and then it flips back. So I'm pulling up the full schedule right now. Yeah, so it goes Mets for 2, Baltimore for 3, then Mets for 4, Baltimore for 3.
Well, we need to go 12-0 record if we playing those teams for 12.
Yeah, so hopefully. So the Baltimore's been playing pretty well lately.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, so...
Me and Brian, we got beef about that Yankees Orioles game from last week.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that after we talk about this Nets.
A little controversial call.
That umpire was blind, man. Come on, man.
Hey, man, it was a strike. It was a strike.
He needs to go on strike after that call, damn it. Way to go with these upcoming games for next week, Rob.
Yeah, so
Jeffrey Mayer catch in the background.
All right, so they play the Mets on Tuesday, August 4th at a 7:05, and then Wednesday, August 5th, they play at 6:05, and then it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday against Baltimore. So it's an interesting week because we didn't play today. We don't play Thursday. We didn't play 3 games this weekend. So you're missing 5 potential game days when they're trying to squeeze a huge season. So we're going to have these lulls right now, and then eventually there's going to be a lot of back-to-backs to make that up. So anyway, so Baltimore 6:05 starts for Friday and Saturday, and then it's a 12:35 start on Sunday. It'll be interesting to see if this hurricane, as Brian was alluding to earlier, will have an effect on weather delays and stuff for any of these games. I thought I just got a weather alert that it was not a hurricane, but the second it hit North Carolina landfall, it became a hurricane again. So I thought that was kind of funny because it's the Hurricanes is their team. But anyway, that's a different sport. But
I've heard enough of the Carolina Hurricanes for a while.
Yeah.
Let's stop talking about them.
I'm sorry.
Let's just stop.
Yeah, okay. But so it's Mets in Baltimore, and then I'm gonna let you guys get into your debate before we get out of here.
All right, that was a winnable game. I'm not saying they're going to go 12-0, but they should at least, make some noise as long as it doesn't get postponed or nobody gets, sick or anything. They should have I say 4.
So we have 5 games this week, and then 7 of those are next week. But it's just weird that it's those teams back to back again and again.
I say they should go 4-1 out of the 5 games next week. What do you say, Arun?
Arun?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I'm just curious what you guys think about the Cespedes.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for that too.
I was going to talk about that when you got to me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of the loop, so fill me in. I'm not sure what's going on. I must have missed.
So Yoenis Cespedes of the Mets did not show up to their game on Sunday. He just straight up did not show up. The team was not able to get in contact with him. And then eventually later in the game, they announced that he's opting out for the season. Personally, I think this is a pretty classless way for Cespedes to handle this, like to just go AWOL like this on the Mets. After you've already committed to teams, like I understand if you want to opt out, like that's fine. But the way to do it, to just completely disappear like that, I think is completely classless, completely not cool with Cespedes. And I don't know if anybody's going to sign. His contract's up after this year with the Mets. I don't know if anybody's going to sign him. The Mets are the Mets, and they just made a mess of this even more than like they do with so many other situations. The Mets made a mess of this, by announcing they couldn't find out where he is, letting people's imaginations run wild. Like, what if he's hurt? Something like that. But just a bad situation all around. And it was the number one story on New York radio today. And Cespedes is opting out. It's probably a good thing for the Mets overall because he's a bit of a headache, but definitely not a good situation with the Mets.
Well, at least it wasn't at halftime of the game. You didn't decide to opt out.
Yeah.
Player retired at halftime. So.
Yeah, seventh inning stretch where he just stretches and walks out.
I'm not playing him. I'll see you guys next year. Yeah. At least he could have left on better terms, but at least he didn't do it halfway through the game. So
I think the first 4 hours, everyone thought he was like dead or something.
Yeah,
that was just like the only
yeah. Wow.
Oh man, well, I didn't know that news. So I mean, he's a talented player, but like you said, he's a head case sometimes. He can be a headache most of the time. But if he's on your team and he's playing well, they tend to overlook those things. But yeah, interested with his contract being up the way he did that. But with baseball, he can go play over in China, Korea, all the other leagues all over the world. They'll probably sign him, and he's not gonna make as much money, but he'll still be able to play after while he signs in MLB. So. It is what it is. So let's get ready to get to this quick debate from the Orioles-Yankees game with Brian, because you guys know I'm not an Orioles fan. I'm not even going to claim myself as an Orioles hater. I just, don't wish anything good to happen to their franchise until Peter Angelo sells because he's such a tool. But I was watching the game, had it on MLB Network. Yankees were up, I believe it was 5-3 or 5-4. The Orioles find a way to take the lead, 6-5, with only one inning to go. I'm like, okay, the Orioles might be able to upset the Yankees. And I'm watching Aaron Judge at bat. And 2 balls, I mean, I could understand being an umpire how they're tough calls. And they were, they could have been looked at as low, but the digital strike zone that's on the TV showed that it should have been called a strike. But it wasn't, which made it a 3-1 count. With a man on, and you pretty much know what
2 men on.
2 men on, I'm sorry. So you pretty much know what happened since those calls went to a 3-1 count. The guy got a ball that was a little bit up, and he punished it, gave the Yankees the lead going into the bottom of the ninth. Now, this same umpire is behind home plate. When the Orioles pitcher makes almost exactly the same pitch in exactly the same spot, and for them, it was a strike. That was bull. The umpires need glasses, or they need to get into electronic strike zone, because I was mad as a non-Orioles fan, so I could imagine what an Orioles fan was feeling about. Brian, explain yourself, man. You can't take these victories that are tainted with bad umpiring. You were hating on the Astros and the advantage they had with the sign stealing. Your team had an advantage by a blind umpire that helped them win this game. They got an assist from the umpire. Should it be an asterisk by this win for you guys, Brian?
No, the pitches were low, man. The pitches were low. Deal with this. The pitches were low, and the last pitch of the game was a strike. That's all I have to say on it. That's all I have to say. The Yankees won the game.
Typical New York fan, damn. Arun, did you get a chance? I know you root for Baltimore sometimes, I think. Did you get a chance to see that game and see the play we're talking about at the end of that game?
No, I now I have to go watch that play.
Oh, you always watching everything.
You can also watch the ball Judge hit to the sun on the next pitch.
Yeah, like I know that Judge has hit like 5 home runs in the past 5 games, but
6 home runs in his last 5 games.
That's just my assumption.
I want him tested, man. He got some superpowers from the COVID, man. I want him tested. Yeah, man. It was just like I said, I'm not an Orioles fan, but that was what Brian, you spoke about, that there's been a lot of missed calls and missed opportunities. That was the first one that I saw actually live. I didn't really see any other, especially during the Nats games that I've watched. But that's
I've just noticed a lot of inconsistencies with the umpires. They don't seem to, the strike zone seems to be way inconsistent this year. And in general, I don't like umpiring, but there does seem to be it does seem to have gotten a little bit worse with the restarted season. I mean, I could just be biased, but it just seems to have gotten worse.
I mean, I just say use them, for the calls, if it's a foul tip, the judgment calls, if it was interference with the catcher's mid and stuff like that. But lead the balls and strikes to the electronic strike zone. Still, you don't have to fire them, get them out of the game. Just limit what they're doing. Just let the balls and strikes be called by the electronic strike zone. Everything else, they handle at the plate. They do the review and all of that good stuff. But lead the strikes, and because to me it gets infuriating to watch on TV to see that it's clearly a strike or clearly a ball, but the umpire calls it. And then when the player who knows the strike zone, doesn't get mad but makes a comment like, yeah, that was a little low, then the umpire gets mad and says he's trying to show him up and then throw him out the game. That's the whole cycle that it doesn't happen a lot. It doesn't happen all the time, but we have seen that. And umpires are human. They might try to be objective, but sometimes they're going to hold a grudge if they feel a player was trying to show them up, which I don't understand a lot of, because nobody's coming there to see them call balls and strikes. They're coming to see the athletes.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel like you're getting showed up. No one cares who you are. Only time they know your name is when you blow a call. Other than that, shut up and do your job.
Yeah, I'm kind of, Carol, I'm kind of with you. I have to say, I'm more of a casual baseball fan. I'm a much bigger fan of, the 3 other of the major 4 sports. I root for the Nationals. I grew up rooting for the Orioles. I had a spout where I rooted for the Phillies when I went to college there. So I enjoy going to, I know. But I wouldn't call myself a die-hard baseball fan, but I do get frustrated with some of the balls and strikes calls, and especially because we have the technology. I mean, in tennis, you can review it. Yeah, and so maybe, I mean, I could see getting as far as that, but at least allow them to review it, right? So maybe not every call is done by it, but if there's a close call, go to the review. Maybe you have a certain number of them, it wouldn't take very long for it to come back and they would be like, oh, it's different. I think they all could be done through strikes and balls. I understand baseball purists won't like it. Yeah. I understand both arguments. I think at least you should be able to review it if especially for a strikeout call, right? If that's actually, you can challenge it, it changes it, or a walk, that's very, close, right? So maybe you can't do every ball and strike. Maybe there's a limit to a number you get per game that you can challenge. So there could be an in-between where it's not the electronic doing it always, but I see all 3 arguments, to be honest, but I do get frustrated at times when some of these bad calls are made.
Hey, Rune, I don't know if we ever got your take on electronic strike zone. How do you feel about the electronic strike zone in the MLB?
I think, I don't know, these umpires are getting worse and worse. It's like getting impaired. So maybe I'm siding with the robots. I don't know.
I mean, they talk about the purity of the game, but the objective is to get the call right. I mean, that's, to me, is the purest way to play the game. That's just my opinion. But, I think it's like you said, we had a technology. They've been using it in tennis for how long? And I actually like that when they, go to the thing and they show the animated, joint on the TV so you can see it also. So, I'm not a diehard tennis guy like Robbie, but I enjoy watching some, Wimbledon, the 4 majors. I definitely tune into those. But that's the thing that's frustrating. You see them using it in championship play that determines who's going to win, and they don't have any problems. But the MLB wants to be on that tradition and purity of the game and all of that other BS that really don't.
Right. All right. Well, I think that now we've gone 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think we've covered a bunch of sports. We next week on Sports on the Hill podcast. We're gonna cover.
Let's add one more sport to it real quick.
Okay, real quick. All right.
We haven't touched on the WNBA champions.
Oh yeah, they're doing really well, although they lost the last one. Right?
Yeah, I want to run down the quick. They're 3-1. They just lost their last game to the Chicago Sky by 2. It was a buzzer beater, I believe. But they're sitting 3-1. The first game of the season was on the 25th of July. They defeated the Fever 101-76. Then they went on to play the Chicago. I forgot the Sun. I think that's the Phoenix Sun. No, not.
Connecticut Sun.
That's the. I knew it was in the division. Just couldn't remember the name. They defeated them 94-89. Then on the 30th, they faced off against the Storm. They defeated them 89-71. And I just mentioned on August 1st, they played the Chicago Sky and lost to them 88-86 on a buzzer beater to put them at 3-1. But we had mentioned them all season 5. Well, it was only been two weeks, but we didn't mention them on some of the test shows we did either. But they are the reigning WNBA champions, and we need to treat them as such.
Right. Well, if we're going to talk about teams, we should also just briefly mention that DC United is 1-2-2, and they've got 5 points. So
they're out of the MLS's back tournament, though. They're not playing for a while.
Yeah. So there's that tournament. The MLS is back, but then is there more games after that tournament?
There are, but I don't think they're for a while. They still have to finish the tournament. The tournament's still going on. Got it.
So they were doing okay at one point, but then they kind of fell off. So they lost their last game to Montreal Impact. That was a 1-0 loss, I believe, right? So anyway, now we've covered all 5 major sports, right? So, we didn't really cover the Redskins all that much other than how nervous
the Redskins.
Oh yeah, dang it! I almost got out of the episode.
Shouldn't have, baby. $2 at the job.
Oh.
Yeah, watching football. Really hasn't had anything going on lately that I've picked up on. They had a couple of pressers that I haven't had a chance to check out yet, but they're in training camp. They're getting together. We mentioned the Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins quarterback situation. I actually saw a report that they said Alex Smith has been looking good on the field. Just running around and doing whatever. And as I'll say it once, I'll say it again. I don't believe Alex Smith will take another snap at quarterback in the NFL. That's my word. I'm going to stick to it until I see it happen. I will not say I was wrong. I'm sticking with my word on that one.
One other thing about the Washington football team that I want to mention is they the way the training camp is set up, it obviously was delayed and into this, so they don't have any of the preseason games, and so I believe that the full team gets together starting August 17th. So they've been sort of coming back and trickling in, but they won't do their full workouts with everybody until then. All on the field together, and then they'll have a couple of weeks to prepare for that season opener. So we'll definitely. I feel like next week we'll talk more hockey because we'll be able to preview the whole playoff picture. We'll talk a little bit more of the NBA, maybe not quite as in depth as we did this week, but we'll definitely break down some of those Wizards games and a couple of our thoughts overall. We'll talk about those 5 Nationals games that are happening and any Washington football news that happens as well. But it's been a great show. I want to thank Brian and Arun for being a part of this baseball roundtable. And I really appreciate both of you guys for staying on and being a part of this extra long podcast with the return to sports sort of ramping up, and I appreciate it. I'll let either one of you guys, I'll start with Arun. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
The Mystics had an interesting Twitter fight this week. Andre Iguodala versus a Mystics player. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Random, the highlight of the Mystics season so far. Other than that,
with some NBA players, it's getting a little feisty, man. I don't know what's going on, but we finally definitely gonna find out.
Sounds good. Well, Arun, we'll talk to you next week for the NBA roundtable, and maybe we'll have you back for more baseball talk as well.
Sure. Thanks, Arun.
All right, Arun, appreciate it. Take it easy, back.
All right, Brian, here's your weekly time to shout out the New York Yankees.
I just want to say the Astros are still cheaters. Joe Kelly, free Joe Kelly, and let's go Yankees. Have a good night.
You can touch on the throw. Me and Robbie had a very long exchange about this throwing situation. We don't want to go any longer, but we will have to debate that next week, Brian. Because
yes, definitely.
yeah, we got some beef on this one, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Call for the hell with Joe Kelly. He should have got more games in my
Oh,
opinion.
please.
Yeah, I agree with Brian for the record. So we're gonna go that way, and I think that's how we'll end the show. Right, that'll be our cliffhanger. Next week, stay tuned for the debate. So
Got it. Appreciate y'all tuning in as always. Make sure you check us out. Check out the website, sportsothp.com, for all the latest episodes and everything. Make sure you check out our on the podcast streaming platform. I'm sure Robbie will have it up soon. I'll be chopping up some of the links, trying to post it on social media. Probably behind the segments. We know nobody's gonna watch the whole 2.5 hours. Yeah, but I'm gonna try to chop it up, get it a little 15-minute segments for Instagram, and probably throw a couple up on Facebook just to because that's what we do. But make sure you tune in at the Bar Radio on Sundays, either at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock. We always stay posted. We keep it real. We talk sports, politics, current events. Make sure you go check out SportsOTHP, our proud accessories. Have some of the District of Champions gear. You see the backdrop. You can have one of those hanging in your room. You have a pillow, cup, a coffee cup, a phone holder, phone case, whatever you want. Just go ahead and cop something and help support the movement. DC Sports without the politics. It's not just a catchphrase. It's not just a motto. It's what we do.